pinching herself going, I can't believe that I'm going to do this. And then because you're training so much, you just kind of fall into that regimen of training and it doesn't seem real.
Exactly, exactly. That is what's so interesting about this, because you have trained so much, you've gone through all these procedures and processes, and then now is the actual one that's going to take you to orbit.
We see Thomas Marshburn talking to the suit techs, and I understand you develop a bit of a relationship with the suit techs, right? Because these things, first of all, are custom fitted down to the centimeter, apparently.
Absolutely. So one of the first things that happens when you get assigned to a SpaceX flight is you go out to Hawthorne and you get measured.
Countdown. The advanced team has arrived at the White Room, and additionally, all 4 crew are through successful leak checks at this time, well ahead of schedule.
Sounds like we're ahead of schedule, but you were saying?
Yep, ahead of schedule is good, better than being behind schedule.
For sure.
So you get measured for your spacesuit, and so they do build it just for you, and they spend a lot of time making sure everything is right. And in fact, when you're in training in Hawthorne, they are there to help you get suited up each time you need to get suited up. And so you have familiar faces here.
All stations core on countdown. The advanced team has
launch.
arrived at the White Room, and additionally, all 4 crew are through successful leak checks at this time, well ahead of schedule.
To arrive to station just days after astronauts from Crew-2 have already returned home from a record-setting space flight. At 10:33 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday night, Crew-2 safely splashed down in the Gulf off the coast of Pensacola. The international crew of astronauts, you see them there. Shane Kimbrough, Megan McArthur, JAXA astronaut Aki Hoshide, and ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet spent 199 days in orbit, and this was the shot of them coming back down from the infrared camera. There was splashdown, a beautiful splashdown. You hear the applause there. They surpassed the record, the previous record, of 168 days set by Shannon Walker and her Crew 1 astronauts.
Yeah, we figured that that record would be broken just about any time. So
since
I'm
you
glad
were the
for
first operation, right?
Exactly. So everybody that's coming after us will probably break the record.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting because of what developed with the delay of this launch. You know, initially there was the weather, and then we had an astronaut with a minor illness.
Yep.
So we delayed 10 days. Initially, this was supposed to be on Halloween.
Right.
So they had to spend a little bit longer than they may have.
They did. They spent a little bit extra time. The Crew-3 crew spent a little extra time in quarantine, and the Crew-2 crew got to come home.
And there you see Thomas Marshburn having a spirited conversation with somebody.
Yep, because they're ahead of schedule, they get to take a little time and talk to the folks in the suit-up room.
Those Crew-2 astronauts, they were in these very seats, Shannon, back into April. We'll dive deeper into the work they did up on station a little bit later in the show. You know, what ended up happening because of the delay, there was no direct handover on the International Space Station. So now it's an indirect handover. Crew-2 is down, and Crew-3 is going up today, hopefully.
Yes.
So they won't see Crew-2. What does that mean?
Yes, they won't see Crew-2 on the space station. So normally we like to have our crews overlap a little bit so that the outgoing crew can really make sure that the incoming crew is all set up to be efficient on orbit. And that means that they need to be told where everything is stowed, how things happen on the space station, so they can really hit the ground running or fly the ground running or whatever is appropriate to say in space station.
Float around.
Float around efficiently.
And run in place.
Yes.
The crew has been training together for months, and each has their own unique connection to the mission. Let's talk a little bit about that. Tom Marshburn, he flew on the space shuttle. He flew on the Russian Soyuz, and now Dragon. And it is the first time Tom Marshburn is the only veteran on a space flight. He's with 3 rookies. But he says he can't wait to see the looks of joy on his crew members' faces in microgravity when they hit orbit for the first time. You got to see that. I
got to see that. I was sitting next to Victor Glover, and it was his first ride into space, and so it was pretty exciting when he officially crossed the line and became a spacefaring astronaut.
And who let him know that he crossed the line?
Oh, that was me. Yeah, so he was busy doing work, and I was watching the altitude. So as soon as we crossed, I gave him a big congratulations.
That was nice. And so Raja Chari, he's accumulated more than 2,000 hours of flight time, as we mentioned. He flew the F-35, F-15, F-16, the F-18. He flew combat missions and Operation Iraqi Freedom, and he deployed in support of the Korean Peninsula. Raja is the commander of the spacecraft, but it's also his first time flying to space, and he's a member of the NASA Astronaut Class 22, known as the Turtles, and they're talking about taking over.
Yes, we have a couple of turtles on this flight, so it's good to see the new kids getting their turn in space.
Absolutely, and the other one is Kayla Barron. It will be her first flight, lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy and a submarine warfare officer. She was lucky enough to meet an astronaut and hear about flying on the space shuttle, and heard what it was like to build the space station. She says that's what inspired her to get into space. She sees parallels between working on submarines underwater, where humans are not supposed to be, with working in the vacuum of space. You can attest to that because you did an underwater mission and you've been to space.
I did, and it is a very good analog, working underwater. We do that training to give crews a taste of what it's like when you're on the space station. You have a schedule, you've got a ground control team dictating what you're going to do each day, and so it's a very good experience. And
you're isolated to that environment.
Yes.
Which is something that is very real with these long duration space flights.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You don't have a quick trip home to solve any problems that you might encounter.
Right. Matthias Maurer's first time flying. ESA named his mission Cosmic Kiss, which is basically a declaration of love for space. He'll be working on 35 different experiments over 6 months. Shannon, it's a pretty appropriate title for as busy as he's going to be.
Yes, yes indeed. Cosmic Kiss, that's great.
When you were up there working in space during your mission with Crew-1, what was the thing you enjoyed the most?
Oh, goodness, there's so many great things to enjoy about being in space. I certainly enjoyed the work we were doing, all the science, but I also really enjoyed the camaraderie that I had with the crew. We were a very close crew. We had 5 people on the USOS side of the space station and 2 Russians, and we spent a lot of dinners together just talking about things.
Sometimes that's the best.
It is the best.
During one of their many trips to train at SpaceX facilities in Hawthorne, our team had an opportunity to chat with Crew-3, and here it is.
I wake up every day, can't wait to work with this crew. I am totally inspired by watching them work. Everyone's contributed a huge amount.
Tom Marshburn, he does an amazing job of taking in all these off-nominal situations and just sort of dealing with them methodically as we go through.
He's been to space already 2 times, and so he has a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience which he shares.
I've gotten the chance to work with Raja for several years now. He's just such a great communicator. He really cares about his team and finding ways to get the best out of everybody.
What Kayla brings to the crew that I think is unique to her is she's an amazing communicator. Just a great job of team cohesion, dynamics, and identifying things that would make us better, and she's done that with our crew.
I feel like that I'm probably the only real rookie on this one, but I think I bring the European spice, I bring European humor.
Matthias is an amazing innovator. He's got a lot of ability to take on a project and really work his way through it.
He always has a really interesting way of looking at things, always has a question I've never thought of before.
Matthias, we've decided to call him Hollywood. He's the most artistic one of us. He's always got the camera. He knows what would be a good shot.
I couldn't feel luckier to be a part of a crew, and we also just have a lot of fun together. We kind of goof off a little bit.
We will have fun in space.
Can't wait to be in space with them. I think they're going to be lifelong friends as well.
It's nice to hear them talk about lifelong friendships as we go back into the suit-up room. I imagine that's happened for you as well.
Absolutely. Once you work as a crew, you're family forever.
Love it. And so now let's check in with John Insprucker in California for another operational update. John, what do we know?
Well, thanks, Daryl. We're at T-minus 3 hours, 42 minutes. Everything continues to go well for launch. We did hear over the countdown net the T-minus 4 hour briefing by the SpaceX launch director. The good news was there wasn't anything significant to report on the rocket. Now at T-minus 5 hours, the team began clearing the hazard area and the buildings around pad 39A. This is known as the blast danger area, or BDA. Now, the only people remaining on the pad are the ones who are going to be needed for ingress of the astronauts. They were cleared to enter the pad at the T-minus 4 hour mark. They're up there right now, and they've actually just opened the side hatch on Dragon. Now, crew arrival is expected to happen in about 40 minutes or so, just inside T-minus 3 hours. So currently, we're running on the Dragon side about 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Good thing. At the launch pad, Falcon 9 is powered on. We performed engine and stage checkouts several hours ago. Currently, the team's on station. They're monitoring telemetry. We're looking at pressures in the gas storage vessels. Everything's pretty much pressurized. We'll top it off inside the last 30 minutes after the crew's on board Dragon. Now, on top of Falcon 9, the Dragon spacecraft is ready for the crew. As I mentioned, the ground team has got the side hatch open. The crew, as you can see, they're finishing up their suit checks. They're getting ready. We've done functional checkouts on the Dragon, and most recently, in the last half hour, the Dragon propellant system was pressurized to the final flight pressure. So currently, all the spacecraft systems are also go. Now, the launch range is working, no issues. They're ready to support at this time. And as we've heard, the weather is cooperating. We actually heard a report. We're starting to see a little bit of blue sky in the late afternoon, early evening down at Kennedy Space Center. So the countdown to liftoff, everything continuing to look good. And as we're getting ready for the crew to walk out, let's go back to our team at Kennedy Space Center.
Thanks, John. It's now T-minus 3 hours and 39 minutes and counting here at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The crew ate their pre-launch meal at roughly around 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then they were given a weather briefing. And we just watched the suit techs from SpaceX fit each crew member into their own custom spacesuits inside their crew quarters. And now you see them chatting it up. In a few minutes, at T-minus 3 hours and 25 minutes, the crew will be making their way out of this famed suit-up room, down the hall, into an elevator, down to the first floor, and then outside to be greeted by their families and a small group of well-wishers. And that will be before they head out to the pad. And the 3 Teslas are outside and ready to go. And that drive out, Shannon, what's that like?
Oh, the drive out to the launch pad is pretty darn exciting, because you know you are heading out to your rocket to go somewhere.
To go somewhere is right.
Yes.
In space.
In space.
And so now
All
it looks
stations
like
core on countdown. All 4 suit leak checks are complete with data collection successful.
okay, so the call out that the suit
We've got
checks
good
are
suits.
good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good
okay,
suits.
that's a great sign.
That's a good milestone.
And you said you were noticing something about the tech on number 10 right there to the right of Raja Chari.
Yes, I was just noticing that he was actually on the ship with me for the Crew-2 splashdown. So they are working hard,
All stations
getting
core on countdown.
everything
All
done.
4
getting a
suit
crew
leak
home
checks
and
are
getting a crew
complete
into
with
space.
data collection
and
successful.
that was just days ago. And you were on the boat too.
I was on the boat too.
You're working hard.
We all work hard.
We appreciate you being here after a long night. I know you were up well into the night and the morning on that. Now there are 3 Teslas waiting to drive the crew out to Launch Complex 39A, and there they are under hazy skies. They'll be riding in the first car. Riding in the first car will be the suit techs and the spacecraft closeout lead. In the second Tesla, Commander Raja Chari and pilot Tom Marshburn. They'll be sharing a ride with the NASA flight surgeon, a position Marshburn once held. And in the third vehicle will be Kayla Barron and Matthias Maurer and another closeout lead. And of course, we will follow the convoy every step of the way, live watching them go to their destination at 39A, the launch pad, a historic launch pad here at the Kennedy Space Center. And we're going to get you as close as we possibly can without actually being inside the car with them,
Yes, I suppose we could put a little camera in there, but anyway, we will track their progress from the ONC building out to the launch pad.
We have another guest close by for launch today who worked for years on certifying the SpaceX Crew transportation system. Earlier, NASA's Marie Lewis caught up to one woman who has been part of the commercial crew team since the very beginning.
Brittany Sims, launch operations engineer for NASA. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So we are sitting inside the Mission Director Center that is on the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This is one of several control rooms around the country that hold NASA and SpaceX teams. And so you are sitting in here on launch day with the chief engineer for NASA, along with other engineers on the NASA side. Tell me, what are you focusing on? What are you working on when you're sitting on console as the crew is suiting up?
Yeah, so during suit up, the crew, the engineering team, we're monitoring our systems, ensuring that everything's looking good as it should. So from the spacecraft to the launch vehicle to even the ground systems, just making sure everything is happening as expected. So in the event something's not looking quite right, we'll have a discussion about it and bring it to the chief engineer, who I directly support. And so to ensure that we're still good to go. So part of the task that I'm responsible for is making sure that we keep track of all those issues and kind of work through them. And then as we proceed down the count, there's certain critical times in the count where the NASA engineering team is asked if we're still continuing to good to go. And so making sure the engineering team is ready for those particular pulls is also a part of my responsibility. And then at the end, as we get closer, we'll give our final thumbs up to the NASA launch manager, and who will provide that final response to SpaceX on behalf of the NASA team. So pretty exciting time, very focused and ready to go.
Awesome. And I know you've been with the Commercial Crew program supporting as an engineer from the beginning, almost more than 10 years ago, in fact. So, and you've had the opportunity to work here on console for every mission and watch every crew suit up. What is it like in here when you're working as part of that team and you're watching the crew suit up, when you've seen firsthand all of the work that's gone into certifying the SpaceX system?
It's like a dream, you know. Sometimes I just want to pinch myself, because I remember when I first started very early in my NASA career supporting Commercial Crew program, and it was really just a concept very early in development on paper, and now we're here sitting at another SpaceX launch as they're launching our astronauts to the International Space Station, and they're certified. So it's really exciting, you know, the fact that I was able to see it and see it where it was at in the very beginning, and now here still being a part of the team where it's operational. I just get even more excited to think about where are we going to go with these commercial partnerships in the future.
Are there any superstitions or traditions that you have with the launch team in this room?
I actually do. I wear a special pair of shoes since the very first mission, and I learned about this through the chief engineer, who wears a special jacket every time. And so, yeah, I have a special pair of shoes that I wear each mission, just to be a part of it, to make sure we're all successful, to add my part to it.
Very nice. And I heard something about chili after launch.
Yeah, this is a tradition all the way back from shuttle. I imagine they might have did it in Apollo 2, where after every successful launch, we'll have a cup of chili and a piece of cornbread when we walk out the door, celebrating our success for another mission. So yeah, it's pretty cool, pretty
fantastic.
Interesting.
Well,
yeah.
I hope you get to enjoy that. And lastly, I want to ask you about, I know years ago you used to keep a photo of the first astronauts who were assigned to the Commercial Crew program, the cadre they called them, the original 4. And 2 of them have since flown already on the SpaceX system, Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken. And you used to keep their photo in your cubicle at the operations and checkout building. Tell me why you kept that photo there.
You know, there's 2 reasons. You know, looking at that photo first is just a reminder of the importance of what we're doing and who's on these vehicles, right? They're fathers, they're sons, they have families, and so they're entrusting us to get them there safely to their destination. And so it's a reminder to continue to always be vigilant in anything I do as I get to support this team. And so it was always important for me to have that photo there, because I've got an opportunity to interact with them prior to their flight. And then also the second part of it was also a reminder to the fact that that was my dream, to come to NASA and fly astronauts safely to wherever their destination is. And so it's a reminder that, you know, you honestly can accomplish anything you set your mind to, because I'm a living example, and I was able to do it, and I'm doing it here today.
All right, Brittany Sims, launch engineer, best of luck to you and the team on this launch of the Crew-3 mission. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and there you see a live view as we head towards sunset here on the Florida coast, which is right about now.
Right about now. It's getting dark.
We don't see the sun, mind you.
No.
We see gray skies and clouds all around, but there's a look at it there with the iconic vehicle assembly building there. But these clouds, we're told, are hoping to clear a little bit. And I talked to our launch weather officer, Brian Cizik with the 45th Space Wing. He says that these clouds are somewhat thin. The moisture is thin, and so there's some dry air in the mid-level area of the atmosphere that's kind of drying it out. So it doesn't look good, but in fact, very thin level of moisture up there with those clouds that you see on the screen right there.
Yeah, having these types of clouds is the good kind of clouds we have. What we really want to avoid is lightning. We cannot launch when there's lightning around the launch
Absolutely
pad.
right. And there are many criteria that govern exactly whether the spacecraft can launch through weather and the conditions of lightning, as Shannon mentioned. Those apparently, the only concerns we have in this are the cumulus cloud rule and flight through precipitation,
right,
which we hope will only be a 30% chance at the time of launch. Let's check in at the hallway and look at the beautiful art inside astronaut crew quarters. 23,000 square feet of crew quarters there, and they have dorm rooms that are very homey and comfortable. You've stayed there, Shannon, and you've seen that art. That's a nice touch that's just been added recently.
It is a nice touch, and they have all different kinds of art that really cover the whole history of our space flight that we've done in this country. And so we've got various artists making their, donating stuff to us, which is really nice.
And it's space-themed art, so it fits, the area. It certainly fits the location. And as you look there, you're looking at the backs of the Teslas that will drive out to the pad. You can see all three of them lined up and ready to go. And the folks to the right of the rope, family, friends, and some media as well. You can see they've got their umbrellas out, ready for a little mist, which continues to come down at this hour.
The LiO seals have been removed, and installation of the LiO cartridge is complete. Ahead of T-minus 3 hours, 29 minutes. We are more than 15 minutes ahead of schedule.
Again, ahead of schedule, that's a good thing. And I believe the license plate on that car in the back said "Send it,"
Send it.
is, I think, is how we all feel.
Yes, indeed. Each time the Teslas seem to have a different license plate with another
countdown.
nice
the
little
LiO
message.
seals have been removed, and installation of the LiO cartridge is complete.
Hey, how about we take a few questions on
ahead
social
of T-minus 3 hours, 29 minutes. We are more than 15 minutes ahead of schedule.
Since 3 out of the 4 crew members are rookies, will NASA and SpaceX have the camera inside Crew Dragon turned on so we can see the astronauts' first reaction when they reach space and see Earth down below?
I suspect that they will. We usually have the cameras on inside the capsule. The real question is, do we have the satellite link-ups to get that video feed back to the ground?
A live video feed would be best, but I'm not sure we'll have that. But they do have cameras. And so the next question is from Mad Dog on Twitter, and she asks, I'm assuming that, why did SpaceX decide to reuse its booster but not its space capsule, which is brand new?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So as a general rule, SpaceX will reuse both boosters and capsules, and so a lot of it just has to do with the time that it takes to refurbish things versus getting new capsules built, so they will have more capsules in the future.
Okay. Well, there's a beautiful shot outside with the clouds overhead. As light begins to dim, we've passed sunset here on the east coast of Florida, and a look out over the Atlantic where we still see a little bit of light. You can see that the clouds, they're not completely covering the sky. We do have some holes, and one of those holes is what we're hoping for as we go by. As time goes by.
Yay.
It'll be nice to see the astronauts when they walk through the walkway, the crew access arm that we see there, because by that time it will be completely dark. And you can see them inside the walkway.
Absolutely. You will have a good view of them going out to the launch pad, the crew access arm. Oh, love that view.
Let's take another question. As we look out, the lights on the Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 rocket. The capsule named Endurance by the crew. And here's our question. Shannon, how can you compare the G's when flying Soyuz versus Falcon 9 Dragon spacecraft?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. For both spacecraft, the maximum amount of G load that you get is about 4.5 Gs. What's different between the two is the profile, when those G loads come on, when the Gs come on and when they go away. So on the Soyuz, you pretty much got up to a G peak of 4.5 and then it tailed off. With the Falcon 9 in the second stage, you just keep accelerating Gs. So you start off pretty slow, and then as you get farther along in that period of time where you're on the second stage, the G loads just increase the whole time. So when the engine cuts off, you're at 4.5 Gs and have been there for a little bit of time.
So it's a slow, steady increase. It's just go, go, go. You feel the pressure on your chest.
Yes.
It's pushing you into your
It's pushing you into your seat. You kind of feel like you're being smushed like a cartoon.
Like a cartoon. Well, but it's got to be an amazing experience when that engine cuts off.
Absolutely. It is so fascinating when the engine cuts off, because all the vibrations and noise that you've been hearing goes away, and you know you are floating. Even though you're still strapped down into your seats, you know that you are floating.
We have one more question we'll take from social media. And we appreciate, if you want to send your questions in, send them to #AskNASA on Twitter. And our next question, what do the astronauts do to keep morale boosted?
Oh, well, I think in general, astronauts have pretty good morale because they know the end goal is a chance to go into space. But in times like this, when there's a lot of delays, it can kind of, your morale may lag a little bit, but you get to spend time with your families, you get to review the task ahead. So most of the time, they just stay focused.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, the delay and what the crew did. We actually heard or got a note from the program manager of the Commercial Crew program who had received an email from Raja Chari. And he expressed his appreciation for all the work that goes on behind the scenes for the Commercial Crew program to get ready for a launch like this. I know, Shannon, you can appreciate that. And he said that they've spent their time doing dry running the heck out of the EVAs that they're planning to do, and getting smarter about Dragon, so we hope that will pay dividends in execution shortly. Working hard, and here they are, the 4 Crew-3 astronauts, as they walk down the hallway on their way out of astronaut crew quarters.
Yep, and they're waving to the folks that work there in crew quarters to get them ready to go, and they'll be stepping into the elevator that you see there. And at the back of the elevator, there should be a big sign that a lot of people from the Kennedy Space Center have signed.
We see that there. You can see the signatures on the left-hand side.
Yep. It's a nice piece of history that's done every time.
Did you get a chance to see that when you walked in, Shannon?
You got to look quick, because once you turn around, it's hard to crane your neck around to look behind you.
We've noticed that. Once you're in the suit, you've got to completely move your entire body in order to get to the direction of where you want to look. But certainly a wonderful moment for everyone, as we were talking about all the people who support this program, to put their signature on and have it seen by the astronauts as they go down that elevator and on their way out to the launch pad. Yes,
as crew, we are well aware of the literal thousands of people that work to make spaceflight happen, and we are so indebted to all of them.
Crew-3 actually spent the time together watching Crew-2 land.
Yes.
Which I imagine, they didn't know that they were going to be here on the ground initially. They thought they were going to see them in space, but they all got together, like the family that they'd become, and watched them come down.
In fact, the whole office tends to get together whenever we can to watch the launches and landings.
And I'm sure the astronauts who are flying appreciate that.
Oh yeah, yes. You have different levels of family. So you've got your tight-knit family as the crew on one space flight together, and then you've got the astronaut family, which really encompasses all the international astronauts as well.
And we are just moments away from seeing Crew-3 astronauts exit the operations and checkout building. You're looking at the doorway.
On countdown, crew displays are configured for crew ingress, 7 minutes ahead of schedule.
And that's the advanced team that's out there at the pad?
That's right. So we've got to pause here because, as you've noted, everything happens according to a timeline. We're a little bit ahead, so the crew may not walk out immediately, but when they do, they'll be right on the timeline to get them out to the pad.
Station core on countdown.
That shot there, you
crew
see
displays are
some
configured
members
for
of the
crew
media
ingress.
and, press corps,
7 minutes
looking
ahead
to
of schedule.
get, photos and pictures of the astronauts as they walk out and have been walking out of this building, going back to the Apollo program. A sense of history. Does that come over you as you are walking through, following the footsteps of some of the most amazing astronauts that have dared to go into space and accomplish these great achievements like going to the moon?
Yeah, it certainly did for me. I can't speak for all astronauts, but I suspect so, because growing up we have seen this walkout so many times on TV, and then now you're actually getting to do it yourself. It can be a bit overwhelming. Looks like we're still waiting.
And we are just seconds away from the astronauts of Crew-3 walking out.
So
you can see them back there behind the window of the door, gathering.
A little bit, waiting for their cue. Waiting for the cue to come out and be able to greet their families before they head off to the launch pad.
And this is oftentimes the shot that you see repeated in the newsreels and on the internet when they walk out to go to their rides and head to the launch pad. And there's stickers around this as well, Shannon. I believe you've got one up there.
Yep, as mentioned before, crews like to put their stickers on just about anything they can. So just above the door, next to the NASA meatball there are stickers from each crew.
I think yours is covering a little bit of the A on the end of NASA.
Yeah, it's getting a little tight. It's getting a little crowded there, so we did the best we could. Here they come.
And here they are, indeed. The Crew-3 astronauts taking their first steps outside before their journey to space.
All stations, core on countdown. Crew have walked out and are departing the ONC building. We are 4 minutes ahead of schedule. All stations, core on countdown. Crew have walked out and are departing the ONC building. We are 4 minutes ahead of schedule.
I cannot hear because I have earbuds.
I can't talk to you.
It's a bit surreal because it was my turn to go to
Great. Read out hard. Read out
Oh, yeah? Nice.
Yes.
Louis Jammer. I'm okay.
Yes. The way the doors are configured on those Teslas gives you plenty of view.
Yes.
At least more important for the astronaut.
And it makes it easier to get into the Tesla.
It does indeed.
Well, they're shutting the doors, so soon they'll be heading up to the launch pad.
And these seats are assigned. These astronauts knew exactly which car to go to.
Yes. Yes, indeed. We've got to have it all choreographed to make sure we got the right people heading out to the launch pad.
That's right. Raja Chari and Marshburn are in the second car, the second Tesla. Matthias Maurer in the third Tesla. And there's another moment now when the families get to come around.
They get to come a little bit closer for one last moment.
It didn't used to be this way.
No, this is actually a tradition that we picked up from the Russians and the crews launching on the Soyuz. So the Russians have a space where the crew walks out, getting ready to go to actually to where they're going to suit up, and the families are there to greet them before they head off.
It's a great move to copy that, bring that here to the family spacing.
I think so. It really shows an international partnership.
There's going to be a more
Yes. Each car gets to have a little playlist, and they will be picking up a tune.
So mentioning that playlist, Tom, I'm going to tell you the songs that I'm excited to welcome to the jungle.
That is a great collection of music.
That doesn't get you going.
I think so. They will not be sleeping in there.
And it's interesting that the playlist is actually 10 to 12 songs long. They've actually sampled portions where they go.
Oh, the music starts immediately.
So as we can see, the crew is departing from the real Marshburn operations and checkout building, now beginning that 20-minute drive.
Thank you, babe.
We are back on time. As we follow the convoy, we'd like to take a closer look at the Crew-3 spacecraft commander riding
All
in
stations
this
core on
convoy.
countdown.
We'll start with him. He is NASA
Crew are
astronaut
departing
Raja Chari.
the ONC building on schedule
I'm Raja
at
Chari,
T-minus 3 hours, 15
SpaceX
minutes.
Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but moved within a week to Cedar Falls, Iowa. My dad had come to the United States to get his master's degree where he met my mom. He got a job at John Deere, and that's why they moved to Iowa. One of the biggest things I took from my Iowa upbringing is sort of that inherent community strength and the interest people had in everyone else succeeding and having a tight-knit community. I think I first became interested in flying at a pretty young age. My mom has pictures of me from back as a kindergartner being really interested in space flight. And I think as I got into junior high, the idea of going to the Air Force or flying became very appealing to me as well. And so astronautical engineering was a great way to be involved in the engineering for space. So at the Air Force Academy, there's all kinds of different engineering paths. You have the opportunity to continue on and do graduate school programs. It allowed me to go on and get a graduate degree at MIT, and it was a wonderful opportunity to take it to the next level. One path is pilot training in my life, and another path is to continue this engineering. I found I really liked engineering a lot more than I thought I would. And then a friend of mine had started talking about test pilot school, in which I realized, like, oh, that's actually a combination of both of these things. So for me, I think I first started thinking about the idea of being an astronaut was about the 2008 timeframe. But it dawned on me that, oh man, this is not just some weird, like, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. It's actually in the path that's realistically achievable.
So what do you say? How about I introduce the 2017 astronaut candidates? Raja's a 39-year-old lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force from Cedar Falls, Iowa.
And so that was how I wound up on the path of applying. So on the SpaceX vehicle, my job as the commander is a fewfold. I don't need to tell Kayla, Tom, or Matthias how to do their jobs. They already know how to do their jobs. It's really more a matter for that 1% of the time where something off nominal happen, what is the best split of resources of, what is the best interactions between those players to get the best result. And so managing those different pieces of the puzzle is really, I think, what the crew part of the commander job is. It's really mind-boggling when you think about how much effort it takes to put people in space and then to sustain them in space. I think what's cool and why I like NASA is none of those people are doing it for the money. They're doing it because they believe in the mission. They're doing it because they believe in solving humanity's problems and pushing exploration. That's the reason people are doing it. I think, if anything, it's taught us that we as humans have this great ability to endure through just about anything. You just have to put your mind to it.
And riding alongside Raja Chari is Crew Dragon pilot and NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn. The North Carolina native is about to embark on his third spaceflight.
My name is Tom Marshburn. I'm the pilot of NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. Not quite sure why spaceflight grabbed me the way it did. It found me, really, more than me deciding to become fascinated with it. There's something about leaving everything we know behind, everything, not just our friends or family or home, but even the planet, going to places that we knew almost nothing about at the time I was reading about it, and understanding how somebody could change. So it was almost like going up into heaven or something and coming back. And that was just infinitely fascinating to me. I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters. 5 of them had decided to become doctors. So the one thing I knew I was never going to be was a doctor, because I didn't want to be just like them. But while I was in graduate school in engineering physics, I realized that everybody I was hanging out with, everybody I enjoyed being with, were either medical students or doctors. Maybe medicine's something for me. And it turned out I loved it. Got so immersed with it that I actually forgot about space for a few years. Began to practice after that in Toledo, Ohio, where they had a life flight program, and that's where I did my residency for emergency medicine. I wanted to fly, and so I applied for the first class of what was then the Space Medicine Fellowship, and in '93, I showed up at NASA. I was all starry-eyed, excited, and ready to start learning about space medicine. I got to know the patients. I got to know the astronauts and the pilots that I would be working with later. And that was an enormous amount of fun. One of my first jobs then as a flight surgeon was to get shipped out to Russia to support the Phase 1 program, which is when we took NASA astronauts, put them on the Mir space station so that we could learn about long-duration spaceflight before we started sending astronauts to the International Space Station. There's something about working at Johnson Space Center, I think, that if anybody had ever considered flying in space or wanting to, when you show up and you see the incredible things that everybody is doing, it's hard not to get the bug to want to apply and become an astronaut. So I did 3 spacewalks and supported a 4th as the inside crew member. The main goal for us was to take these batteries, each weighing about 200, 250 pounds, and move them from the robotic arm that was holding them from the space shuttle and move them onto the space station. This had not been done before, so it's very thrilling. The long-duration mission is quite a bit different from the shuttle mission. You really feel like you've become a resident of space, a resident of zero-G, and you start to feel like you're getting an idea of how this works. I'm looking forward more to flying with 3 people that haven't flown in space before. This is a very unique crew. They are incredibly operationally savvy already. Those, I imagine, from their prior jobs at ESA and in the military. I know they can do the job. There's no question about that. One of the great legacies of the space station is not just going to be the science, but very importantly, the international cooperation. It's not for survival, it's not for competition in the marketplace, it is for just exploration. And it's just a vibrant, wonderful place where great science is happening.
And there you see a live view of the Crew-3 astronauts making their way to the launch pad here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. You're watching coverage of the launch of Crew-3. Just 3 hours and 7 minutes away from lifting off. And Shannon, you drove out at night just like these astronauts. You don't see a whole lot.
Well, we were still, it was a little bit daylight while I drove out, because we launched right after sunset. So I could see a few people on the side of the road waving us on and cheering for us. It was pretty special.
I was just going to say, there are folks out lining the road now. We may not see them because of the darkness, but they're there to support.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great feeling.
One thing you didn't miss as it drove by was the vehicle assembly buildings.
It's hard to miss.
It's hard to miss that, even in the dim light that it's currently shining on it right now. But we are here in the middle of a wildlife refuge, and so You're not going to see a lot of city lights. You're not going to see a lot of infrastructure around that illuminates. But you can see the 3 Teslas being led by a Kennedy security vehicle out there out front. It's about a 20-minute drive. And they're getting ready to turn onto the road that goes right in front of the vehicle assembly building. We've got our helicopter up.
We do, watching the action from above. That's good.
Yeah. Watching the convoy as they go along. And as they drive by here, Shannon, 2 of our astronauts, Raja Chari and Kayla Barron, are part of the Artemis 18. As they drive by the VAB, they're well aware that there is a fully stacked Space Launch System rocket that is going to send an Orion spacecraft on a test flight to the moon.
That's right. I know they're aware of it. They're probably not thinking about that right now, but they know it's there, and we are all looking forward to its launch early next year sometime.
In fact, this camera angle is from on top of the VAB looking down 525 feet up.
It's a huge building.
It is one of the largest buildings in the world by volume. And there you can see it passing by the press site area. And
yes, we can see them off to the right here.
We can see them from our host desk position. Passing right by the VAB on the way to pad 39A. Now the crew convoy is approaching the pad and entering what is known as the blast danger area, or BDA. Before any pad technicians, engineers, or astronauts enter this area around the launch pad, the SpaceX and NASA teams have conducted internal go and no-go polls to make sure that the area is safe to enter. And on that ride is mission specialist Kayla Barron, riding along with Matthias Maurer. She has a unique background as a submarine warfare officer. She was a member of the first class of women commissioned into the submarine community, and this is her first trip to space.
I'm Kayla Barron, a mission specialist for NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. I was born in Idaho. My family moved a lot when we were kids. We lived in Montana, Colorado, but for most of my middle school time and high school, lived in Washington State, in a town called Richland, which is in southeastern Washington. I'm the middle of 3 girls. My dad's an engineer, my mom's a math whiz and a runner. They always really raised us to be ourselves, which was really cool for me and my sisters to all kind of find our own paths. I knew that I would want to find ways to challenge myself and become a leader. That's how I first got interested in joining the military, and ultimately got interested in attending the Naval Academy, where I studied control systems and robotics engineering. When I showed up at the Naval Academy, I thought I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And we have this really cool training between our sophomore and junior year. I kind of think of it like the Navy's job fair. You go spend a week with every single major warfare community: surface ships, submarines, aviation. And when I got to go underway on a submarine, I just felt like this is where I belong. It's not for everyone. It's kind of a fascinating world. You develop your own little microcosm under the sea because you have to be able to provide everything you need to live and work safely and also accomplish a mission within your own crew. The time on my submarine was the most developmental period of my life for a lot of reasons, but especially because of the operational experience and operational teamwork I got to do while we were underway when we were deployed. I actually never even thought about becoming an astronaut until after serving on a submarine. For me, it was all those parallels that really inspired me to want to apply and to believe that I even could.
All right, NASA family and friends, our first astronaut, Kayla Barron.
I found out that I was officially on Crew-3 when I was on my way to the Neutral Buoyancy Lab for spacewalk training. And I got a text from the chief of the office, and he said, "If you're awake, give me a call." So I gave him a call on my way into work, and he said, "Kayla, you're on Crew-3." And I was just so excited. Crew-3 is just such an amazing group of people. It's a really special crew because I think everybody brings a really unique perspective and different background, and so there's always something to learn. And whenever we're faced with a problem or have a decision to make, it's really interesting to see the different perspectives and how together we make better decisions and come up with more interesting solutions. I just feel super lucky to be with people who all have such diverse perspectives and experiences, but have really learned how to mesh and work together as a team. I definitely would want to thank my family for supporting me on this journey. They've always been there for me and pushed me to chase my dreams and been super supportive every time I stumble or fall, helping me get back up and try again. Without them, to hold me accountable, to push me, I definitely wouldn't be standing here today.
I love Kayla's story.
It's a fantastic story.
Yeah, and has a degree in nuclear engineering, has served on the USS Maine. Impressive. There is a shot of the pad. The astronauts are heading out there, and it's funny, we're talking about Kayla, and we're about to introduce a piece with Matthias, and those two are riding in a Tesla together. You got to check out their playlist because it's an eclectic mix. They're listening to Lose Yourself by Eminem, Sun by Rammstein, I hope I said that right, it's a German band, Thunder by Imagine Dragons, and then Dream On, the Aerosmith cover by Ronnie James Dio. You imagine
that is quite a collection of music there, but it'll get them in the mood.
It will. And there they are driving up to pad 39A, Shannon, and they might have spotted two rockets because SpaceX actually has a second rocket up on pad 40 for the Starlink launch. There's a static fire tomorrow. So as they drive out there, one rocket on the left, one rocket on the right.
Let's hope they pick the right rocket to go to.
It looks like they're headed the right direction.
It does.
So that's a good thing. And here comes the vehicles, the Teslas, with the astronauts inside.
All stations core on countdown. Crew have arrived at the pad 5 minutes ahead of schedule.
So they're going to pull the cars around and park right at the base of the launch structure there.
Pull right up to the pad.
Right up to the pad.
Was it this close for shuttle and Apollo, would you know, in terms of the vehicle getting access there to the pad?
I believe it was. Now, I did not fly on the shuttle, so I can't tell you for sure, but I believe they did bring the bus that was carrying the crew out there right up close to the launch pad as well.
That's a great shot as they make their way, the three vehicles, to the rocket.
To the rocket. Beautiful.
Now, before the crew makes their way to the elevator at the ground level of pad 39A, let's get a look at mission specialist and ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer about him making his first flight into orbit.
I'm ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer. I will be mission specialist on the NASA SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. I was born in Germany. I grew up there, and for the first 20 years I actually stayed in the more or less the same area. I was an ambulance driver for almost 2 years, and I also financed my studies later on by working on the weekend. I studied 2 years in Germany, material science. Then I went for a year to the UK, studied there material science, and discovered how much you can learn while being in a different country. That was a huge inspiration for me, and I decided to keep on learning more languages and continue in different countries. In 2008, ESA started the call for new astronauts. Out of 8,500 applicants, only 10 candidates passed all the tests and were considered suitable for astronauts. I was one of them. I was always fascinated by space. And what does an astronaut actually do? So an astronaut works with a lot of engineering stuff. We do science in space. We work in international teams. And the adventure that we are able to live as astronauts, in a combination of these four facts: engineering on the edge of what is possible, science, international teams, and adventure that's only possible as an astronaut. I think Crew-3 is a kind of a rookie crew with only one experienced space flyer, Tom. But on the other hand, I don't feel like that we are rookies at all. Raja has a huge background in flying. Kayla, she has a huge background in working in a very difficult and highly technical environment. I don't consider both of them rookies. I believe we are an extremely good team, and after a few days in space, I think we will be there and it will be our environment. Once we arrive on the International Space Station, we will run a lot of experiments. My focus will be lots of experiments in the material science domain. The name of my mission is Cosmic Kiss. It's a declaration of love to space, and especially to the two only oases that we have in space, our beautiful planet Earth and the International Space Station. The patch is inspired by Guides of Nebra. It's a 4,000-year-old disk that was found in Germany, and it shows to me that people already 4,000 years ago watched the night sky and were fascinated with the universe. And they probably asked the same questions that we ask ourselves. How did the universe start? How did life come to our planet Earth? Is there life somewhere else in the universe? There's a huge number of people in Europe, in the US, in Russia, in Canada, in Japan, all those people that contribute that human spaceflight is actually possible. I want to say thank you to everyone who helped me to arrive at that point that I'm today. I will be thinking of you when I fly to space, and I send all my love to you down on the ground.
Great hearing from Matthias Maurer, especially is inspiring how he worked as a paramedic to pay for his schooling on the weekends.
Such a diverse background, which is what we need as astronauts. We need people with all kinds of skills.
So true. He calls it a rookie crew, but, you know.
But they bring a lot of experience, so rookie in name only, I think.
We're looking live now at the base of Launch Complex 39A, the base of the launch pad itself. Those elevators, the same elevators that took space shuttle astronauts up to the top of the launch tower. And we're expecting an announcement any moment now that the crew is on the pad. We'll see them walk up to those elevators, but oftentimes it's interrupted, maybe it's planned, by a little look up at the rocket.
Yes, the crews definitely want to take one last look at the rocket before they go climb inside. And so you will see them sort of leaning back and looking up. And the reason they lean back is, again, you don't have much maneuverability in those suits when you're standing up.
Not a lot of maneuverability, but a lot of protection should something happen in space.
Absolutely.
As we look at the elevators there is a specific path that you must take to get to the rocket, and you're looking at some of the shots of inside the launch tower. And Shannon, it's not a kind of find your way or even have anybody lead you. You've rehearsed this a number of times.
You do. You do come out and practice getting your suits going out to the launch pad, so you know what needs to happen the day of launch.
And what are the white chevrons on the floor that we see there?
Those chevrons are actually part of the safety system that we have on the launch pad. So if anything should happen while the crew is out there by themselves before they lift off, and they need to exit the capsule quickly, those chevrons will give them the direction that they need to run or walk quickly. We don't really want them to run in their spacesuits and hurt themselves, but you know, it could be dark, it could be you might have fog, rain, smoke, who knows. So you just need to make sure you are heading the correct direction.
And they stand out brightly against that black background. And there is the Dragon capsule.
Won't be long until there's crew inside.
It certainly won't. And you can see the systems that are connected inside. Those are temporary until they get them sealed up.
That's right. So you've got that hose going in there is providing some air circulation to keep everything temperate for the crew. And once they're inside, then the crew will hook up to the systems of the Dragon, and they will get air flowing through their suits.
Very good. They pre-chill the engines with fuel, and they also pre-chill, now I know, the capsule.
They pre-chill the capsule, absolutely.
It's called the White Room, that area right there, and there's a lot of history behind that room as well.
Yes, that is the room that all the shuttle astronauts were in before they stepped into the shuttle for their flight, and so we have the same White Room in use for the Dragon flights.
And once again, we're back at the base of the launch pad with the elevators, and we should see the astronauts walking in at any moment now.
Yes, any moment. What's interesting about the trip up for the Dragon versus the shuttle is actually, the ingress was a little bit lower down than we have for the Dragon. So you'll see after they step out of the elevators, the crew actually has to go up a flight of stairs. Look, I see one of the crew members
and
right
there
now.
Comes the first two astronauts.
Looks like
Commander
they're gonna...
Raja Chari and pilot Tom Marshburn.
Yep, and it looks like they are going to take a look at the rocket. There they are, bending back, looking up.
Having a little chat as they look. At about 2 hours and 35 minutes, and just a few minutes from now, the astronauts will ingress or climb into Dragon with the assistance of the suit techs that you have seen right next to them all along. They'll help them get buckled in. Getting a nice good gaze,
yes,
looking up.
Good look. So now they're heading to the elevators for their trip to the top.
It is nightfall here at the Kennedy Space Center, and we had clouds earlier on. It's a little harder to see, but the misty rain that was coming down earlier, Shannon, and managed to blow in here on the host desk a little bit, that stopped, and that's a good sign.
It is a good sign that the rain has stopped.
They've made, of course, upgrades to Pad 39A over the years. In the 1960s, of course, it launched the Saturn V for the Apollo program. It was then upgraded to support the space shuttle. And then SpaceX took a lease of it in 2014. And the first flight after it was reconfigured was a CRS flight in February of 2017. And there they are, popping up from the elevator, having a look around.
That's right, and you'll see them head to the stairs to go up one more level with the suit techs and the team following behind.
And exactly what you mentioned, this is the additional flight that they must take to get to the top of Dragon. And it looks like Stephanie Wilson is in their group.
Yep, she will be there with the crew just as long as possible to aid them in any way that they might need.
The mission specialists, I understand now, are also in the elevator and headed on their way up. And in this particular view, Shannon, we know that there's a telephone there to the right of the pathway.
That's right. So when they're up at the top of the launch pad, the crew will actually get an opportunity to call their families. And so someone's got the phone numbers, they'll be dialing for the crew and hand the phone over to the crew member. And I have to say, it's a little bit hard to hear because you've got that helmet around you, so it's not like you get the phone right up to your ear.
And it's got big buttons. You showed me a picture on your phone.
Yes.
I appreciate, maybe it's if for those who have gloves on, still manage to punch them.
Exactly. We want to make sure those phone calls happen.
This is a split screen view that we just saw as you see the mission specialists, Kayla Barron and Matthias Maurer, making his way up the steps there, and they are all gathered now on that 255-foot level of 39A.
Yes, and so they're waiting either for the phone calls or for their cue that it's actually time to ingress the capsule.
And now that we're here at the launch pad and at the top, it's a good time to introduce you to the team that would lead a rescue operation in the case of an emergency. Let's take a look.
Safety is critical. We're in the business of launching people into space, and it is a dangerous job, and we want to make sure that the people who are going on the rocket know that their lives are in good hands. My role is to make sure all ground operations run smoothly. We take human spaceflight safety very seriously, and we are ready to jump in at a moment's notice with a team of fire rescue, decontamination, triage, and medevac forces ready to respond at a moment's notice. We're there as a specially trained group of folks because these people are inside the blast danger area. And it's called that because they're operating next to a fully fueled rocket. NASA prides itself on putting safety first and foremost, and we've got a great record of that. The fulfillment that comes from seeing that rocket lift off the pad, there's no feeling like it.
One of the really cool features of Dragon is that it can fly itself. Here's a look at the team responsible for making that happen, as well as programming Dragon's crew displays.
The Dragon software team is responsible for all the code that lives on the vehicle to be able to fly in an autonomous way. Autonomy in the vehicle basically means that Dragon can fly itself. Dragon is able to take a set of inputs, make a decision, and then output those things to a particular system. So we put a lot of brains or a lot of code onto the Dragon capsule directly to be able to fly to the station and back. We're also responsible for all of the displays code, so all of the software that lives on the displays and through displays that the astronauts are using. There's a lot of information available on the displays overall. There are overview plots of all the major systems that fly on Dragon. So for example, the propulsion system, the thermal systems, the life support systems, the avionics systems. We provide block diagrams available for the crew to be able to get a general sense of awareness of each of these systems, their health, their status, if there are any faults or failures. So we write all of the code, and then we also validate it and test it to make sure that it works in the ways that we expect before launch.
It's fascinating the effort that goes into making that software. And there's a view inside the crew access arm, Raja Chari, Tom Marshburn, as they make their way looking out the windows towards their spacecraft. It's a great shot inside that.
That is a great shot.
That access arm.
And there they are approaching the end. The capsule's
Well,
just
white
off to their
room,
left.
Right?
Yep.
And there's a little tradition that happens inside there.
Yes, we will sign the wall of the white room. Got to make our mark.
And they're starting to do that there and getting a little guidance from one of the closeout techs.
All stations
If you're
core
just
on
joining
countdown.
us,
Pilot and commander have arrived at the white room. We are 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
the announcement of arrival. If you're just joining us, you are watching live coverage of NASA's SpaceX mission known as Crew-3. Good evening and welcome to the Kennedy Space Center here in Florida. I'm Daryl Nail, along with a recent passenger aboard a SpaceX Crew Dragon, NASA astronaut Shannon Walker. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I am so excited to be here tonight.
You've given us some great insight.
All stations core on countdown. Pilot and commander have arrived at the white room.
I get to
we
watch
are
a
10
launch
minutes
too,
ahead of
so
schedule.
it's all good.
It's all working out. So we are watching the first two astronauts get ready to board, and there's been some mist out there, so we got to dry off the helmets.
Yes, yes. As I said previously, you don't want to have a wet suit when you get into the capsule. So the suit techs there will make sure that everything is just right before the crew gets inside.
And it's a bit of a maneuver to get inside, Shannon, that you practice, and we're about to see that.
Yeah, you'll see that the astronaut has to carefully bend down and step over the hatchway. They do this for a couple of reasons. One, obviously you don't want to hit your head on the capsule going inside. You don't want to hurt your helmet at all. And then two, you don't want to nick the seals on that hatchway because you need those seals to work properly to maintain pressure inside the capsule.
And we just saw Raja step inside, and next up is Tom. And it's they're carefully placed inside. I saw one of the techs, hold him up, say, well, hold on.
Right, right. We do this just so the choreography needs to be just right. So Raja's getting settled inside. He will be followed by Tom. And then after that, you'll probably see the suit techs go inside and start assisting with the strapping of the seat belts.
And good evening, Raja. I have you loud and clear. Welcome to Endurance.
All right, for now, let's...
I got you loud and clear as well.
Had a communication check there, and we'll watch Tom ingress to the Dragon capsule carefully. Watch your head.
Yep.
Good evening, Sarah. CBR, strap it in.
As he goes inside and takes a seat right next to the commander, Raja Chari.
And good evening, Raja. I have
for
you
now,
loud
let's
and
check
clear.
back in
Welcome
with
to Endurance.
Jesse and Courtney back at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Jesse.
I got you loud and clear as well.
Thanks, Daryl. Right now, we're watching the crew ingressing Dragon, which is just a spaceflight term for climbing aboard. Ingress is what we use when crew members are getting into a spacecraft or airlock, while egress means the opposite, they're exiting. Before climbing into the capsule today, the crew completed a foreign objects debris check, or FOD check. That means they themselves have to be inspected for any substance or debris that isn't supposed to be on them or their suits, which could potentially cause damage to Dragon.
To help protect against debris, the crew has covers on their boots as well as their umbilical port on their suits that need to be removed before they can ingress. As you can see on your screen, they are now actually crossing the crew arm right now, and soon they will start ingressing into the vehicle and then start attaching their umbilicals to their suits from Dragon, and the suit techs are there to help them as needed along the way. And what a great shot of a couple of our crew members crossing the crew access arm, waving hello. The umbilicals allow the crew to have comms through their suit, air to help keep them cool, as well as delivers nitrox for the suit pressurization. Now, as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization.
Yeah, that's right. And there are 4 seats configured right now inside of Dragon, and they are numbered 1 to 4 from right to left when looking at the seats. Raja Chari will be in seat 2, or the commander seat, and Tom Marshburn will be beside him in seat 3, which for Crew Dragon is the pilot seat. Kayla Barron will be in seat 1, and Matthias Maurer will be in seat 4. Directly in front of the crew members are 3 displays, which they'll use throughout flight, getting inside into Dragon systems, seeing any alerts or issues with the vehicle, if required, taking control and manually flying Dragon.
Now we're getting some great shots of the crew members signing that white wall room. And once they ingress and get buckled in and strapped into their seats, they will do a comm check to make sure that they can hear mission control, and then their seats will be rotated into position for launch.
And the crew looks happy as ever as they're running through some of these final steps before climbing into Dragon. Again, this is really their last stop on Earth, right here in the White Room.
Looks like they're trying to say hello to the camera there. Saying hello to the world.
Again, wiping off those helmets. There was a little bit of rain outside before they entered the building, so they just have to make sure that their suits are clean, their helmets are clean. They also have a protective layer on their boots that's taken off before they get inside of Dragon. You can almost think of it as if you just cleaned your floors and you have something on your shoes that you don't want to bring into your house, you would take those off at the back door. And that's basically some of those steps that they're running through right now.
And as you mentioned, Courtney, you mentioned FOD, foreign object debris, even water. A foreign object debris is basically anything that is not supposed to be where we expect it to be, and that includes that water, that rain, any of the dirt while they were walking outside. So we want to make sure that we keep that outside of the Dragon capsule and keep that clean room environment inside of that
SpaceX
vehicle.
Dragon,
And getting a view now.
Seat 3 comm check.
And Tom, great to hear your voice. Welcome.
That's loud and clear, Sarah. Good to hear your voice, too.
And we'll hear some of those informal comm checks as they climb aboard Dragon and get hooked in to their umbilicals and into their seats. Getting a view right now inside of Dragon. Raja Chari closest to us right now.
Sarah, this is Kayla with a comm check from seat 1.
Kayla, I have you. And Tom, great to hear your voice. Welcome. Welcome.
Have you loud and clear?
That's loud and clear, Sarah. Good to hear your voice, too.
And again, an informal comm check from Kayla Barron, mission specialist on this mission. And you just saw them already working on those displays, those gloves that they have touchscreen capabilities. So they're able to just get into their seats and get right to it.
Sarah, this is Kayla with a comm check from seat 1.
As soon as they got into their seats, they started to check it out.
And we can see Matthias Maurer.
Kayla, I have you loud and clear. Great to have you on board. Welcome.
Have you loud and clear as well. Thanks.
Again, Dragon is designed for up to 7 crew members, but today we only have 4 crew members, so it is configured for the 4 crew members on board Crew-3 today. but underneath their seats is where the extra 3 seats would be. Since we don't have them, we actually use that space underneath their seats for cargo.
Yeah, and you'll actually get to see some of that cargo once those seats get rotated into launch position, which is one of those visual milestones that we'll run through. But right now we're standing by for some official comm checks from all of the crew. We've already heard some informal comm checks, the crew getting excited as they get into their seats, get hooked up to their umbilicals. Those umbilicals, of course, providing air and comms through their suits. And these suits fit specifically to each astronaut, from the gloves to the top, the bottom, and the boots.
Yeah, they are custom made, and we always say that it's basically an extension of the Dragon capsule because of how this is basically their own personal AC unit
SpaceX Dragon,
attached to them.
C4 contract is Matthias Maurer. How do you read me?
I have you loud and clear, Matthias. Guten Abend und willkommen.
Wonderful, Sarah. I also have you loud and clear. Ich freue mich auf den Flug.
And another successful informal comm check from Matthias Maurer. Again, all 4 crew
SpaceX
members
Dragon,
of Crew 3
C4
now
contract is
inside
Matthias
Dragon.
Maurer. How do you read me?
Yeah, and you can see the suit techs are there helping them get strapped in. This is
I
a
have you loud and
5-point
clear, Matthias.
harness,
Guten Abend und
buckling
willkommen.
them into their seats.
Wonderful, Sarah. I also
Raja
have you loud and clear.
Chari
Ich freue mich auf den
Marshburn are
Flug.
already buckled in as Matthias and Kayla finish up getting connected to their umbilicals and get their harnesses buckled up. Again, the suit techs are following procedures, specific procedures, to make sure that they do check everything. And once the crew members are all buckled in, they'll also check around the cabin and make sure that the cargo is packed away exactly how they planned, make sure that there are no loose objects inside of the cabin, and finishing out their closeout procedures before they close the hatch.
One of the things we've mentioned several times are those umbilicals that they get hooked into once they're seated. Those umbilicals allow the crew to receive communications through their suit. They also provide air to help keep them cool and comfortable, as well as delivering nitrox for suit pressurization. Of course, these suits' primary function is to protect the crew in the unlikely event of a cabin depressurization.
Yeah, that's right, Courtney. So they'll keep these suits on all the way through ascent. Once they get out into orbit, as they cruise to the International Space Station, they'll be able to doff their suits or get out of their suits and get a little bit more comfortable on the ride to the International Space Station.
So again, we've run through some informal comm checks. There will be some more formal comm checks coming up. They'll be doing multiple comm checks through multiple paths to Dragon. They'll do some through TDRS, and that's our tracking data and relay satellite system. We use that for communications with the International Space Station as well. They'll also do some ground checks. You'll hear the term ground, which refers to the ground stations around the globe, allowing us to get communications to Dragon, to the multiple ground stations, again, here in Hawthorne, Mission Control Hawthorne, where Jesse and I are, as well as Mission Control Houston being 2 of the main players in the climb uphill. Once those comm checks are completed, their seats will be rotated into position for launch.
Yeah, and it's getting pretty exciting. This is like one of the most exciting parts when they start getting settled into their seats in Dragon. It starts really getting real, and they start doing those closeout procedures to close everything out inside of the capsule and then close the hatch. And as Courtney mentioned, we are just waiting for comm checks coming up next. And then following comm checks, they will do seat rotation followed by suit leak checks.
You can see Tom Marshburn and Raja Chari really starting to work on those displays above them. But as we mentioned, once they do get rotated into launch position, they'll be able to see those displays much easier. Their arms will be able to reach them much easier. And like I mentioned before, they do have touchscreen capabilities on those gloves.
Yeah, but you can still reach the screens even in the seat. station right now.
So if you're just joining us, the crew already arrived at pad 39A. They walked down the crew access arm to where they are now inside of Dragon. Of course, they made that stop in the White Room. They got to sign the wall before climbing in. They also did a FOD check, or foreign objects debris check, to make sure they weren't bringing anything that could potentially harm Dragon or them on their climb uphill to the International Space Station. Getting views now inside of Dragon. Commander Raja Chari, closest to us, Tom Marshburn, to the right of him on your screen right now, giving a thumbs up. Yep, and everything is still on track right now for an on-time launch today. So let's check in with John Innsbrucker for the latest with the health of both of the vehicles. John, what's the status so far?
Well, the good news, Courtney, is everything's looking good. We've got just over 2.5 hours remaining in the countdown until Falcon 9 lifts off with Dragon and Crew-3 aboard, heading for the International Space Station. Now, the Dragon launch ops team has completed their major activities to prepare the spacecraft for the astronauts, obviously, now that we've got the crew inside. We've done checkouts of the major systems, including the escape system. We've got all 4 crew members inside the capsule, getting strapped down, getting ready for their comm checks. There are no issues in work right now on the Dragon spacecraft. Now, in the next few minutes, we should be starting up the comm checks with the crew and Dragon. We heard the informal ones as each member got hooked up, but there are 3 sets of comm checks that get done. As Courtney mentioned, the first one is the umbilical comm checks. That's essentially a hardline harness that's attached from the ground up through the launch tower into the Dragon capsule right to the spacesuits. Then we'll do a check with the ground station. That's essentially where we bring up a SpaceX ground station here on Earth, and we talk to the crew through the radio frequency link. And then lastly, when we're on orbit, we will also use the NASA tracking and data relay satellites called TDRS. That's a constellation of 10 geosynchronous satellites that allows us to be in communication with Dragon most of the time when it's in orbit, and especially when we may not be over a ground station. We're waiting to hear those call-outs right now in the Dragon countdown procedure. And once they're complete, then we'll move on into the next steps, which is essentially getting the crew into launch configuration and backing the ground support team out of the capsule. Now, over on the Falcon 9 side, the team is located in Firing Room 4 in the Launch Control Center at Kennedy Space Center. They're settling in for their final checkouts and propellant loading and launch. Now, the Falcon 9 team will also undergo comm checks with the crew. That happens about T-minus 2 hours when the various responsible engineers who bring information to the crew during ascent, the avionics engineer, the guidance, nav, and control engineer, the propulsion engineer, they all make sure that the crew can hear them as they report the status of Falcon 9 as we head uphill into orbit. Now, currently on the range, the third of what we call the 4 factors to support the launch: spacecraft, rocket, then we've got range. They continue to report no problems. They're releasing the weather balloons for us, and we're gathering the data as the balloons get up to altitude to let us know what the wind shear looks like. Good news is the weather, the 4th element, is looking good for launch. We're still showing a 30% probability of violation, but the things haven't changed. Weather forecaster still believes that the weather will stay to the west of the launch pad, and we'll have good conditions for launch. Now, we're looking at weather not only at the launch site, but around the world. We need to be able to get Dragon safely down if there's a splashdown in the Atlantic, for example, in the case of an escape maneuver. We're also monitoring contingency splashdown locations if the crew had to come back to Earth before docking with the space station. Now, if this were to happen, SpaceX and NASA, as I mentioned earlier, we are coordinating with the U.S. Coast Guard to ensure crew safety upon splashdown. That includes extra ships and air assets to patrol a 10 nautical mile keep-out zone. This helps mitigate safety concerns for any boaters who might be trying to approach the landing area. The good news is the clock continues to count down at T-minus 2 hours, 27 minutes, and 35 seconds. All systems are go. We're going to head back over to Jesse and Courtney here just across from me in Hawthorne as we wait for the communication checks with the Crew-3 team.
Thanks, John. As John just mentioned, we are waiting for the formal comm checks. And in order to get to where we are today, it did take years of hard work. The development of Crew Dragon really started with the cargo Dragon. Dragon was designed from the beginning for flying humans to space, so much so that even the first Dragon cargo Dragon had a window. Before we could fly humans, our teams implemented a number of design upgrades to make sure that both Dragon and Falcon 9 are suitable for flying people, and then put both vehicles through thousands of tests to prove their safety. Since Demo 2 in May of 2020, SpaceX has been regularly flying crewed missions for NASA at the cadence of about one flight every 6 months. Now, today marks our 4th human spaceflight mission for NASA and 5th overall. For those following along, we launched the first all-civilian mission to space last month from this very same launch pad. With inspiration for the 4 civilian astronauts, Jared Isaacman, Dr. Cyan Proctor, Haley Arsenault, and Chris Dombrowski marked the first time that no one on board had a day job as an astronaut. The crew orbited the Earth for 3 days, flying higher than the space station and further than Dragon's ever gone before. After 3 days taking in amazing views of the Earth, conducting valuable science to further human space exploration, and chatting with many Earthlings below, on Saturday, September 18th, the 4 civilian astronauts safely splashed down just off the coast of Florida.
Inspiration 4 really was a historic first, and what's really exciting is it certainly won't be the last of its kind. Low Earth orbit is an incredible space for scientific research, technology development, and astronaut training. Its value has been proven through thousands of experiments and decades of international and commercial cooperation. NASA's efforts, particularly with the Commercial Crew program and the certification of SpaceX Dragon, are building the foundation for a robust U.S.-led commercial economy in low Earth orbit. Commercial transportation to space is but one element of NASA's larger plan for commercialization. We're enabling the development of commercial space stations, private astronaut missions to the station, demand for in-space manufacturing, and more. With U.S. industry leading the way in low Earth orbit, our sites can focus even more on the Moon and Mars. It's a fascinating time to be part of the space industry, and we have a lot of work to do to meet those goals, namely aboard the International Space Station. And that work continues with today's Crew-3 mission. So again, the team inside of Dragon right now, Crew-3, has been running through some of those final procedures. Next up is our comms check. We'll hear those come over on the live broadcast right here. You'll hear them as well. There will be several that the crew will run through. Right before we came back on, we saw the crew giving the closeout team some fist bumps and some high fives before they departed and went outside.
You can see them on your screen right now, strapped in, ready to go in their seats. Again, up until this point, they've been able to ingress the vehicle, get strapped into their seats, and now they're ready for those comm checks that we're waiting for. They did do some informal comm checks.
We're ready for comm checks of 1.3 to 4.100.
Copy, Dragon. Stand by for umbilical comm check. Seat 1, Seat 2, Seat 3, Seat 4, comm check.
Seat 1 has you
And
left
SpaceX
clear.
Endurance, we're ready for comm checks of 1.3 to 4.100.
Seat 3 has you loud and clear.
And Seat 4, alles gut.
Copy, Dragon.
Verstehe dich
Stand by
laut
for
und
umbilical
deutlich.
comm check. Super. And core loud and clear as well. Umbilical comm checks complete. Stand by for ground station comm check. Seat 1, Seat 2, Seat 3, Seat 4, comm check.
Seat 1 has you loud and clear.
Seat 2 has you loud and clear.
Seat 3 has you loud and clear.
And Seat 4, alles gut. Ich verstehe dich laut und deutlich.
Super. And core loud and clear as well. Umbilical comm checks complete. Stand by for ground station comm check. Dragon SpaceX comm check.
Endurance has you loud and clear.
Core loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for TDRS comm check. Dragon SpaceX comm check.
Endurance has you loud and clear.
Core loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for TDRS comm check. Dragon SpaceX comm check.
Endurance has you loud and clear.
Core loud and clear. TDRS comm check complete. Stand by for comm checks with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1, comm check.
And MD, Endurance has you loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks on Dragon to ground.
Dragon SpaceX comm check.
Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
Endurance has you loud and clear. MD, Endurance
Core loud and clear. TDRS comm check complete.
MD loud and
Stand
clear.
by for comm checks with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, LD on
Dragon,
countdown 1,
MD on
comm check.
countdown 1, comm check.
LD, Endurance has you loud and clear. And MD, Endurance has you loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks
And
on Dragon to
LD,
ground.
loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground.
Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
Dragon, LD on
MD, Endurance loud and clear over Dragon to ground.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with LD.
Endurance has you loud and clear, Dragon to ground.
Dragon, LD on countdown 1, comm check. LD, loud and clear.
LD, Endurance has you loud and clear in countdown 1.
Dragon SpaceX, launch configuration comm checks complete.
And Endurance LD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, LD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
And LD, Endurance has you loud and clear, Dragon to ground.
LD, loud and clear.
Proceed rotation 2.2 for that 100.
Dragon SpaceX, launch configuration comm checks complete. Copy Dragon. Report when ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
And SpaceX Endurance, we are ready for seat rotation 2.2 for that 100.
And there we just had it. Official comm checks are now complete. Next up will
Copy
be
Dragon.
seat
We will
rotation.
report when initiating.
So in the meantime, let's go over to Houston to check in on what's been done on board the International Space Station to prepare for Crew-3's arrival. Sandra.
Thanks, Jesse. As we said earlier, the team here in Mission Control Houston is actively controlling and monitoring the space station as they await Dragon's arrival. The Expedition 66 crew is in their sleep period for the day. However, just a short time ago, we did hear confirmation
Dragon
that NASA
SpaceX
astronaut
initiating
Mark
seat
Van de
rotation
Hei worked
shortly.
with teams on the ground in order.
Endurance copies, we're ready.
NASA astronaut Mark Van de Hei did work with teams on the ground in order to get the broadcast streamed up to the space station, so he's going to watch his soon-to-be crewmates launch live as well. The crew on board have completed a number of other tasks
Dragon
as well to prepare the
SpaceX
station
initiating
for
seat rotation
Crew-3's
shortly.
arrival. NASA astronaut Mark Van de Hei received some additional
Endurance
onboard
copies, we're ready.
training for monitoring Dragon during its final approach, which he'll do from the station's cupola. In addition, he will set up computers and control panels needed for approach monitoring and hatch operations and pre-position emergency equipment. Back here in Houston, our rotating flight directors and their teams will be in constant communication with the SpaceX mission director for the duration of the flight uphill.
Endurance copies.
Once we get to integrated operations, the NASA flight director will be conducting the series of go, no-go polls at the predetermined checkpoints for Dragon's approach. For now, we'll continue to follow along from here in Mission Control Houston, so I'll send it back down to the team at Kennedy. Over to you, Daryl.
Dragon
thanks, Sandra.
seats are in the launch
and
position.
As you look live inside the capsule, you can see that the seats have been rotated up so that they can have clear visibility of those monitors, Shannon.
That's right. There's a rotation position where the seats are, where you get in, and then they rotate them in the position for launch.
If you're just joining us, it is T-minus 2 hours and 16 minutes until the 4th astronaut launch for SpaceX and NASA's Commercial Crew program. There you see in the foreground Commander Raja Chari, next to him pilot Tom Marshburn, and to either side of those two are our mission specialists. Both Kayla Barron and Matthias Maurer are strapped into their seats inside Crew Dragon Endurance. The next milestones coming up are seat rotation. We've actually just had that, but the next one is hatch closure. And at this moment, if we pop outside the spacecraft, it is interesting, we have a little rain shower.
We do have a little rain shower joining us here. Hopefully it will push on out and not interrupt the launch sequence.
Well, you have predicted correctly, because I was just texting with Launch Weather Officer Brian Sizik. He tells me we're still holding at 30% probability of violation, which means still 70%. That's where we stand. But a rain shower has pushed through. It's a light shower.
It is a light shower.
And they're hoping that that will clear out behind that and give us that clear weather to launch. But indeed, we've got rain coming down at the launch pad and right here at the host desk.
Yes, we do.
While we wait for the hatch closure, let's take a minute now to learn more about what Crew-3 astronauts will be doing after they arrive on station.
I'm Kayla Barron, a mission specialist.
Hi, I'm ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer. I will be mission specialist.
My name is Tom Marshburn. I'm the pilot.
I'm Raja Chari, the commander of the NASA SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station.
So the Crew-3 mission is on the NASA SpaceX commercial space vehicle to the International Space Station. We will be working on the International Space Station for around 6 months, doing lots of experiments, lots of science.
And Crew Dragon is one of our newest ways to get there. There have been Soyuzes that have flown to the International Space Station with Crew. The Space Shuttle flew to the International Space Station, and now the Crew Dragon is taking human beings to the International Space Station. So we've partnered with SpaceX in the Commercial Crew program. They design, build, and operate these vehicles that take us, transport us to the International Space Station so that we can contribute to the amazing work that we're doing up there.
Yeah, you know, it's exciting to fly on a new spaceship for sure, and a new design of a spaceship. But I'm looking forward more to flying with 3 people that haven't flown in space before. This is a very unique crew. They are incredibly operationally savvy already. So what I try to do is, if there's any gaps in their knowledge of how they're going to feel, how they're going to operate, what is the zero gravity going to be like, how that might challenge our expectations for what we can get done. So you really feel like you've become a resident of space, a resident of zero-G, and you start to feel like you're getting an idea of how this works. Every day is a long series of problem solving. You got to figure out where to put your pencil, where to put your drink if you have it. So maybe 10,000 times a day you're solving little problems like this, and when that becomes fluid, then you really feel like you can be efficient and get a lot of work done. And there's a lot of work to get done on the space station right now.
We spend a lot of our time training in Dragon because that's a really dynamic phase of the mission, but it's just such a tiny fraction. The whole point is going to the space station and doing some incredible work up there. So our time on the space station is spent, one, keeping the space station healthy. It's been up there for 20 years. There's a lot of systems that need maintenance and upgrades and operators there to keep them working well, but we also do some incredible science. The space station is a national laboratory orbiting around the Earth, and it's a really, really unique environment.
Once we arrive on the International Space Station, we will run a lot of experiments. I'm a material science engineer, and so my focus will be lots of experiments in the material science domain, but also life sciences will be very important.
There's all kinds of research going on a daily basis that lead to just fundamental changes in the way we understand how our world works. I will definitely be the eyes, ears, hands, and the actuator for the experiments that help lead to the science, the discoveries that can push our species further, both beyond the planet and just understand and operate on our Earth even better.
One of the great legacies of the space station is not just going to be the science, but very importantly, the international cooperation. This is one of the first, certainly today's perhaps most prominent, international cooperation for exploration. It's not for survival, it's not for competition in the marketplace, it is for just exploration.
I think we're now about to enter a new era of human spaceflight. In the past, we astronauts flew to the International Space Station to do purely science. Now the station will become more and more commercial. There are commercial experiments on one side, but there are also commercial astronauts who come up to run maybe their own science programs, but also to enjoy just being up in space, to experience space, and to convey this message, the fascination of space, to all the people on the ground.
And as we're back live inside the Dragon capsule, watching the crew prepare and get ready, Raja Chari working out that suit a little bit and popping up his helmet for some air.
4 good leak checks.
Not that they can't breathe when it's closed, but certainly you can have a little bit of outside
Copy, Dragon.
air.
We see the same.
With the helmet open?
Closeout
Right,
team will
exactly.
perform final closeout steps and then egress the capsule. Report when ready for hatch closure.
And there you heard the call out for the upcoming
Endurance is ready for hatch closure.
Hatch closure.
Yes, and we heard that call out that they had 4 good suit leak checks,
And
and so
SpaceX
that is
Endurance,
a very
4 good leak
important
checks.
step that has to be done before they can close the hatch. Sounds like everything is on schedule.
And that's great news.
Copy,
And
Dragon.
so
we
let's
see
take
the
another
same.
look at some of the
Closeout
crew
team will
members here.
perform
If you're just
final
joining
closeout
us,
steps
live
and then
coverage of
egress the
Crew-3
capsule.
at the
Report when
Kennedy
ready for hatch
Space
closure.
Center in Florida. Let's introduce you, if you have not met him yet, to
Endurance
Raja
is ready for
Chari.
hatch closure.
He is an astronaut and military test pilot.
And copy that,
I'm Raja
Dragon.
Chari, the commander of the NASA SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. So on the SpaceX vehicle, my job as the commander is a fewfold. I don't need to tell Kayla, Tom, or Matthias how to do their jobs. They already know how to do their jobs. It's really more a matter for that 1% of the time where something off nominal happen, what is the best split of resources, of what is the best interactions between those players to get the best result. And so managing those different pieces of the puzzle is really, I think, what the crew part of the commander job is. It's really mind-boggling when you think about how much effort it takes to put people in space and then to sustain them in space. I think what's cool and why I like NASA is none of those people are doing it for the money. They're doing it because they believe in the mission. They're doing it because they believe in solving humanity's problems and pushing exploration. That's the reason people are doing it. I think if anything, it's taught us that we as humans have this great ability to endure through just about anything. You just have to put your mind to it.
Seated next to Raja Chari is Crew Dragon pilot and NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn. He is a veteran of 2 space flights, STS-127 on the Space Shuttle Endeavour and Expedition 3435 on the Russian Soyuz.
My name is Tom Marshburn. I'm the pilot of NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. Not quite sure why spaceflight grabbed me the way it did. It found me, really, more than me deciding to become fascinated with it. There's something about leaving everything we know behind, everything. It was almost like going up into heaven or something and coming back. And that was just infinitely fascinating to me. The long-duration mission is quite a bit different from the shuttle mission. You really feel like you've become a resident of space, a resident of zero-G. One of the great legacies of the space station is not just going to be science, but very importantly, the international cooperation. It's not for survival, it's not for competition in the marketplace, it is just exploration. And it's just a vibrant, wonderful place where great science is happening.
We were wondering about the helmet there with Raja Chari and why he's just got it half open. And of course, our expert astronaut, Shannon Walker here, explained it to me.
Yeah, you want, so you see that white band on the bottom of the helmet, so if it's in the wrong location, you won't have as good visibility to read the items that you need to read on the screen. So he's got it positioned to help him read the screen.
You can look further lower as well. It appears that he's got a checklist on his knee there.
Yes, on each leg of the crew there is a satchel that holds a tablet with procedures and other information. It looks like Raja's tablet. He probably has it placed on the display above him, but you will see before they launch, they will take that down and replace it on their satchel on the knee.
Holds better there, I imagine, with the forces of launch.
Exactly. You do not want that falling on you as you're launching into space.
Seat number 1 is behind this camera shot, and that is mission specialist and NASA astronaut Kayla Barron. She'll be making her first trip to space today. The submarine warfare officer has deployed 3 times aboard the USS Maine.
I'm Kayla Barron, a mission specialist for NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. When 9/11 happened, watching New York City respond and how we came together as a country really cemented for me a desire to serve. That's how I first got interested in joining the military and ultimately got interested in attending the Naval Academy. I found myself really drawn to the submarine warfare officers as mentors. And when I got to go underway on a submarine, I just felt like this is where I belong. If I hadn't had that experience, I don't think that I would have believed I could become an astronaut. Crew-3 is just such an amazing group of people. It's a really special crew because I think everybody brings a really unique perspective and different background. I just feel super lucky to be with people who all have such diverse experiences, but have really learned how to mesh and work together as a team.
And finally, in seat number 4 is Crew-3 mission specialist and European Space Agency astronaut Matthias Maurer. Today will also mark his first spaceflight.
I'm ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer. I will be mission specialist on the NASA SpaceX Crew-3 mission to the International Space Station. In 2008, ESA started the call for new astronauts. Out of 8,500 applicants, only 10 candidates passed all the tests. I was one of them. I was always fascinated by space and what does an astronaut actually do. So an astronaut works with a lot of engineering stuff. We do science in space. We work in international teams, and the adventure that we are able to live as astronauts in a combination of these 4 facts: engineering on the edge of what is possible, science, international teams, and adventure that's only possible as an astronaut. I want to say thank you to everyone who helped me to arrive at that point that I'm today. I will be thinking of you when I fly to space, and I send all my love to you down on the ground.
Back live inside the Dragon capsule as the crew goes through their various communication checks and suit checks.
As they prepare to have the hatch closed.
Awaiting that hatch closure. And by the way, if you would like to ask us a question, and by us, I mean Shannon, just pop on over to Twitter and use the hashtag AskNASA. That will send us the question. We'd love to have them. Shannon has been answering them throughout the show and doing a great job with it. We really appreciate her being here. And you've had some good questions as well. Even the patch, which I know you're big into your crew patch. Shannon.
Of course, I like our crew patch. I think it's pretty good looking.
You know, it's hard to deny. I love the blue. I love the dragon. But the Crew-3 patch is pretty cool as well. The logo was designed for this mission by the astronauts themselves, just as you did, Shannon. They say that the capsule flies upward while the flames below honor the thousands of workers who worked on Crew-3. The number 3 is prominent in the shape of the exhaust below and is next to a dragon. And the highlighted stars represent Crew-3, as you can see there, and the 4 red planets, they represent humanity's dream to explore Mars. A beautiful patch there.
Oh, it is a lovely patch. It is very well crafted.
You work with the artist that puts it together?
Yes, so each crew can either design it themselves or they have a choice to work with an artist. And so the crews are trying to take elements of what they feel really represents their flight and put it into a patch.
And I imagine, has anybody like drawn one themselves?
Oh, sure.
Oh, how about that? Especially the artist, you know, Nicole Stott, former shuttle astronaut.
Yes.
She's an artist.
She's definitely an artist. I love her work.
As you can see them preparing for the hatch closure, it's documenting the seal around the hatch.
Yes, they're looking very carefully to make sure that that seal is completely intact, because that's what's going to hold the pressure inside the capsule.
You don't want any foreign object debris, what we know here at NASA as FOD.
As FOD, right.
Which is anything that's not supposed to be there?
Anything that's not supposed to be there. And it can be, they're looking for really tiny things. Something as small as a human hair will cause that seal to not operate properly.
And they're using, it appears to be smartphones to take these pictures.
They do. I mean, the cameras on the phones are so good these days that you can take some pictures and blow them up and really get a good view of what that hatch seal looks like.
They are good cameras indeed. Flying just before the last flight of the Crew Dragon, I should say, was the crew from Inspiration 4. And our NASA social team was putting together our page for this launch from the Kennedy Space Center. And they, as you can see, the hatch being closed right there. They're going to push on that to make sure it seals up really good.
They're going to push on it because the hatch itself, if it's not locked, it wants to spring open. So you've got to overcome that force to get the latches to latch on that hatch.
So we'll hold the thought on the NASA social video as we look. Looks like the crew closeout number 36 was putting a fair amount of force.
Yes, it did look like he was pushing hard, but that's good. We'll get that hatch closed.
And now begins the process of them sealing it up.
Sealing it up and doing all kinds of checks and cross checks, because they'll seal it up. There'll be a pressure check to make sure the pressure does in fact hold inside the capsule. And you'll see teams of people here working together to make sure every step is done exactly so.
Carefully and methodically working their way. 255 feet up in the air, we might add, in the white room. As they work on closing up that hatch, let's head out to California and catch up with John I for an update on the operations. John?
Countdown is proceeding nominally at this point, and thanks, Daryl, for that handoff. We're coming up just inside T-minus 2 hours. Now, on board the brand new Dragon spacecraft Endurance, we've heard a lot of the communication between the crew and the ground. Comm checks were complete. We saw the astronaut seats rotated to the flight position. The suit leak checks were successfully completed, and we've been watching the closeout leads lean into that hatch, getting it secure, and we're getting ready now to begin what will be the hatch leak checks to make sure that all the seals are good, everything's bolted down tight, ready to go. Once we finish the final leak checks, the team will begin the steps to close out the white room and get the access arm ready to retract. And then that closeout team that you see there will leave the pad by about T-minus 1 hour, and that'll leave just the 4 astronauts on the pad. Now for Falcon 9, their team for countdown is on console. Here you can see firing room 4. They're preparing for communication checks with the astronauts coming up in just a few minutes. Currently on Falcon 9, the engineers have pressurized launch vehicle gas storage bottles. That was done before we cleared the pad. These are composite overwrapped pressure vessels. They hold gases that are used to fill the propellant tanks with hot helium as that propellant is pulled out of the first and second stages by the Merlin turbopumps. As we get into the last half hour of the countdown, we'll do a final top off of those pressure vessels, make sure that we're at flight load. We also use these pressurized gases to spin the Merlin engine turbopump, when we have to start an engine in space. So the second stage MVAC engine has to start up after the first stage separates. And the first stage engines, we've got 3 of them need to restart to begin the entry, and then 1 engine for the final landing sequence. So all of those engines need the helium gas to be able to spin and start the engines. The gases are also used for attitude control systems. Not so much on the way up, but it helps orient the vehicle after the first stage separates and comes back down for the landing on the drone ship. And we also use the gas to deploy the grid fins and to kick the landing legs out just before we land on the drone ship. We're continuing to monitor weather at the launch site and around the world at contingency abort and landing zones. Concerns we're looking at continue to be the same too since we started the webcast. Cumulus clouds and flight through precipitation. Now, a moment ago, the range did report that currently right now we are no-go on weather for flying through precipitation, but they also expect that to clear up and for us to be go when we get to launch. So this is just a temporary. They have to tell us when we're not meeting all of the weather rules, but right now it doesn't look like a concern. So the good news is weather's looking good. Dragon's right on time. Falcon 9 is quiet, getting ready for its big events coming up here in another hour or so. And so with that, we're going to hand it back to the team at Kennedy.
All right, thank you, John. And yes, indeed, we can confirm there was some weather that came through here.
Yes, there was.
It was a little bit of rain, a light storm, our launch weather officer tells us, Ryan Sizik, informing us that it was a light one. It was passing through, but in fact, when it's here, it does cause that to go red.
Exactly. If it's raining here, we would probably not launch into it. Thankfully, there is no lightning, which is another criteria that we use to determine whether or not we are go for launch.
We're back inside the capsule now. We're awaiting a couple of things. They're going to do some comm checks. They're going to do some suit leak checks. And in fact, I think you were able to eye when that happens. The suit leak check, do they?
Oh, the suit leak checks. Yeah, you can tell when they are doing a leak checks. I believe they've already occurred, but one of the things that happens is you have your visors closed, all your zippers zipped up, and they will pressurize the suit. So you'll get extra air volume inside your suit, so the suits will kind of puff up. You can see that when the leak check happens.
And now the half-down visor look is
it's very fashionable.
It's the look of the day. In this moment, as they await, what is that like? Because, I mean, they're waiting to go to space, launching on a rocket.
Yes, they know they've got just under 2 hours to wait. So a couple of things are going on. Of course, each crew member there is thinking about their role during the launch. They're probably chit-chatting a little bit amongst themselves, trying to stay comfortable in those suits, and probably just trying to enjoy the experience of actually being in their spacecraft.
SpaceX, we will be commencing health checks for the launch escape system. Expect momentary flight computer state change, followed by a transition back to pad hatch closed.
Endurance copies.
That's a call out to check the health of the emergency escape system.
Yes, this is what's primarily happening in those last hours before launch. Is the SpaceX team is checking all the systems on the spacecraft to make sure everything is working properly. And of course, the launch escape system is one of the main systems that we need to work properly during a launch.
Especially with that hatch closed.
Yes, exactly.
So we've got about an hour now until the pad team wraps up the final checks and clears the white room, and that's when the action will pick up with the crew access arm retracting. We'll have the arming of the launch escape system, as we just mentioned, and then prop loading will follow. So we'll keep a live view of the crew here as they're sitting tight for the next hour or so and provide you with some more context about this mission. But for now, let's head over to Houston for a closer look at what the crew will be doing when they reach their destination. Sandra.
Thanks, Daryl. Once Crew Dragon arrives at the International Space Station, they'll be welcomed by their Expedition 66 crewmates. Since the Crew-2 astronauts splashed down Monday evening off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, we're doing something called an indirect handover, which just means a new crew of astronauts arrives at station after another crew departs. This mission will also continue keeping the long-duration crew size on station at 7. On the U.S. side, we'll have 4 astronauts to conduct research until until NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei returns to Earth in March of next year. That jump from 3 to 4 astronauts takes our average of 30 to 40 hours of science work a week on station all the way up to sometimes 80 to 100 hours, effectively doubling our amount of time dedicated to research. As the station is first and foremost a laboratory, the crew will jump right into conducting experiments with new research still to be delivered on upcoming cargo flights, including another SpaceX Dragon scheduled right now in December. I'll toss it over to Marie now, where we will learn more about some of the exciting science on the horizon for Crew-3. Marie?
All right, thank you so much, Sandra. I am here with Dr. Hector Gutierrez. You're a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering at the Florida Institute of Technology down the road in Orlando. And you actually have an experiment launching aboard Crew-3 tonight.
That's right, Mary. Thanks again for the opportunity of being here. Very excited to be here to the launch of our flight units. Our experiment is called the Smartphone Video Guidance System. The name is a little bit misleading because we're actually not using any smartphones. But this is technology that was originally developed by NASA Marshall for guidance of a spacecraft and proximity maneuvers. And we're finally going to, after several years of working on the deployment of SBGS, we are going to have the opportunity to deploy it on the robot on the space station, which is called Astronaut. So the smartphone guidance system is essentially a software sensor. So it's an algorithm that can be deployed using the hardware resources of a robot, a CPU, camera, and in this case, that will be the resources of Astronaut.
Okay,
Yep.
and so there's the actual payload is a small beacon. It's about, you told me it's about the size of a flashlight. I
Yep.
think we have a couple of photos of it.
Yep.
But this beacon, there it is.
There it is.
It attaches to the wall of the International Space Station, and it has some LED lights that light up, and then that gets used in combination with the sensor to maneuver the Astro Bee that you mentioned. That's the free-flying robot on the International Space Station. There are actually 3 of them, and you're going to test 5 different maneuvers with 1, 2, and even all 3 of the Astro Bee robots at the same time. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So these beacons will be attached, some of them to the wall or some of them to the payload compartment on the Astro Bees, and they essentially will be used as navigation beacons to execute a number of formation flight maneuvers and to demonstrate capabilities of SBGS and its accuracy.
So how can you use this technology if these maneuvers are successful, if they do what you expect them to do, what you hope they will do? How can you apply this technology in space and to help improve our lives here on Earth?
So the expectation is we have many potential applications for SBGS in the space context. Right now we're working with Marshall on a landing mission in which one of the possible applications of SBGS in space is to serve as beacon for planetary landings. As you probably realize, every time that a probe or a robot is dropped in a planet, one of the biggest issues is how to know accurately where it lands.
Sure.
So planetary landing is a big challenge, and SBGS is one of the potential technologies that could be used for that. But besides that, SBGS can be used for formation flight of a small spacecraft. One of the trends in the future of space exploration also includes that instead of launching large spacecraft, it is much more cost-effective and robust to launch a cluster of items that then need to be oriented relative to each other at a relatively short distance. So SBGS is a strong candidate to fulfill that role. But so within space applications, the potential uses of SBGS are for proximity maneuvers, formation flight, landing. But besides that, we're very excited that SBGS can also be used on Earth for similar applications where you need robots to cooperate between each other to dock or land, if it's a drone, for example. Picture in the not too far future, you can put your beacon at your doorstep and a delivery drone will drop the package right where the beacon is. You know? And it can save significant effort to a delivery person who has to go up 3 flights of stairs or something like that.
Just have the drone drop it off.
Picture it in New York. So there are a number of applications. We want to go into a commercial, explore the commercial possibilities of developing a commercial version of SBGS that can be integrated with robotic platforms and drones.
All right, Dr. Hector Gutierrez, thank you so much. Best of luck with the smartphone video guidance sensor experiment on Crew-3, and we'll be watching and following along, and enjoy the launch.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, you too. Daryl, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Marie, thank you. Here's a closer look now at some of the life-changing science astronauts are performing aboard the International Space Station.
The International Space Station is a state-of-the-art microgravity laboratory that is unlocking discoveries not possible on Earth and helping us push farther into deep space.
Every single day, we are answering big questions about Earth and about space, about where we came from and about where we're going. But the other thing that we're doing is we're learning more questions to ask.
Microgravity turns almost everything we know upside down. Liquids behave completely differently. Fire burns in new ways. Biological systems reveal surprises.
There's a few things that have made me gasp out loud up on board Space Station. Watching heart cells actually beat has been a pretty big one.
We're studying ways to grow food in microgravity.
I got to tell you, these are pretty amazing.
We're learning how human bodies react to life in space, and how to keep crew members safe and strong on long-duration exploration missions.
Deadlifts are awesome on Earth. They're also awesome in zero gravity.
We're testing technologies that will be critical to our return to the Moon and Great Leap to Mars. Our research has contributed to medical and social benefits on our home planet, allowing us to find new ways to combat disease back on Earth and develop technologies to deliver clean water to remote communities in need. The spectacular vantage point of more than 200 miles above our planet supports our monitoring of Earth's climate, natural disasters, and plant life.
Our planet Earth is absolutely stunning. To me, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, I just see beauty in different ways.
The growing new space economy, so vital to our continued progress in space, is flourishing in low Earth orbit. We're inspiring future generations from a platform that is one of the largest international collaborations of our time. We're doing science at 17,500 miles per hour. Come along for the ride.
And Shannon, you were a part of that ride, doing that science at 17,500 miles an hour.
Yes, I was.
And it looks like they're going to have a busy time up there.
I think so. There's so much science to be done. The ground crews do a very good job of keeping the crew on board scheduled the entire day doing that science.
Taking advantage of every moment. As we look live inside the Dragon capsule, we are T-minus 1 hour and 44 minutes until liftoff. We are here with Shannon Walker, NASA astronaut who flew on Crew-1, watching Crew-3 prepare to get ready for their flight. And it appears they haven't been very chatty.
No, they haven't been very chatty. I guess it's a quiet crew.
It's a quiet crew, and that's just fine as they prepare for their liftoff. Crew-3 is scheduled to arrive to station just days after astronauts from Crew-2 returned home from a record-setting space flight. Take a look at this at 10:33 p.m. Eastern Time. The view looks a little similar. This is Crew-2, though, safely splashing down in the Gulf off the coast of Pensacola. There's a view from the infrared camera as the parachutes opened up. The crew of Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, JAXA astronaut Aki Hoshide, and ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet, they landed safely, splashing down there in the Gulf as the parachutes came down around them. They spent 199 days in orbit, Shannon, surpassing the previous record of 168 days set by Crew-1 astronauts, of which you were a part.
I was. I would have loved to have stayed up 199 days, but 168 is not bad either.
And before they returned to Earth, NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur, well, they were good tenants because they made sure that station was ready for Crew-3 I had a chance to speak with them in space before they came home. Hey, Shane and Megan, great to be with you today. This is fantastic. You guys are currently over the Pacific Ocean, cruising at 17,500 miles per hour towards our general direction, though it doesn't look like you're going that fast. And Megan, your hair is looking luxurious, by the way.
Thank you very much.
So tell me, you're getting ready for Crew-3 to arrive.
Yeah, so we've been getting their sleep stations ready to go, their crew quarters. So we've been cleaning those and getting them all ready, so they're going to be set. We also have gotten their suitcases up here, and we got one. Here's Raja's, and we got Kayla's there. And so we got Tom's and Matthias's as well. So all your clothes are ready to go for the next 6 months. So that's going to be set. All your food's ready to go as well.
And given the size of those suitcases, it doesn't look like the wardrobe is having a lot of variety. But you don't need a lot of that up in space. Tell me, for the first space flight, you know, for the folks that are coming up, 3 of the 4 astronauts, this is going to be their first space flights. For those 3 astronauts, we know they've trained extensively, but what is something as a first-timer they will experience that you just can't train for?
Well, Daryl, that's a great question. And really, it's the physical environment that we live in that is really hard, obviously, to train for when you live in 1G on Earth. And so it's how you move around, how you move efficiently, how you can, you know, go floating and flying through the space station without crashing into things, without knocking things off the walls. But these are all smart folks. They're going to figure it out really quick, and they're going to be doing great work up here before we know it.
Hey, Shane, one of the veteran astronauts, Thomas Marshburn, you know him pretty well. You got any stories about him? He's a veteran astronaut, just like you, flew on shuttle, been up to the station before, and both of you the astronaut class of 2004. So you got any good stories about Tom?
Nah, none really. Tom's such a great guy. I mean, he was at NASA before we were selected as astronauts as a flight surgeon. So some folks may not know that. So he was kind of the go-to person in our class of, hey, what's it really like? What I don't understand this, how NASA runs. And since he'd been here a little while, he was definitely our go-to person for that. Tom and I are also both from Atlanta, so we have that in common. And we've enjoyed working together and training together over these many years.
Couple of Southern guys. That's great. Want to ask you, though, currently Crew-3, as they're getting ready to go up, I was watching you guys play a game. In fact, the entire world was watching you guys play a game with your thumbs. And I'm just curious, what was that game? And why were you playing it?
So that is actually a French game that our ESA crewmate Thomas Pesquet taught us. It's called the Game of Thumbs, so very original title. And we were basically playing it to pass the time. So we were, you know, you have a lot of time when you're sitting in the vehicle. And we had, during that launch week, you know, you have some practice runs as well. And so you have a lot of time sitting in the vehicle while the vehicle is getting fueled. And of course, you know, we talked to each other about what, you know, to be prepared for any emergency scenario that might happen. We talked through all of our nominal tasks and monitoring that we're going to do, and then we still have some extra time. And so Thomas had this game at the ready for us to play, and that kept us entertained for the time between the activities that we had to do.
Shane Kimbrough and Megan McArthur aboard the International Space Station, thank you so much. And by the way, fun fact, during this interview, you just traveled 3,000 miles. Incredible.
Thanks, Daryl. Really great talking to you, and get Crew-3 up here safely. We're looking forward to having them on board.
Will do. Take care. There's the floating flip. You can't talk to astronauts without having a flip.
Always got to do it.
Shane and Megan, they were great, and you know it was great to find out about that game. They enjoyed games. This crew apparently is enjoying some solitude.
I think so. They're all, but they are doing what Megan just said. They are going through the nominal procedures. They're talking through the emergency procedures to make sure that they are prepared when launch actually happens.
Shane and Megan back on the ground. Shannon, you were out there when they came down, and you were one of the first people they saw.
I was. It's hard to believe it was just Monday night when they splashed down, but it was pretty special for me to be out on the ship that gathered up the capsule, and I got to see the crew, and it was extra special because I was on station when they came on board, and then I got to be there when they splashed down.
How about that? That must have brought a smile to their faces even after, you know, coming back from space.
Yes, they all told me that it was great to see my friendly face.
Great story, Shannon. Thank you so much. And now let's check back in on launch operations in Hawthorne. John I. What has the team at SpaceX been working on?
Thanks, Daryl. We're coming up on just under 1 hour and 38 minutes before launch. Now, the crew of 4 are in the capsule, hatches closed, and we have heard a successful completion of the hatch leak check. So pretty much everything is finished with the capsule. The ground team will be securing the white room, the access arm, and they'll be off of the pad in just about a little more than 30 minutes. Now, the launch engineers for Falcon 9 are in their firing room 4 in the NASA Launch Control Center. That's just outside the Vehicle Assembly Building at Kennedy Space Center. You can see the view they're going to have through those large windows of Pad 39A. It's 5 kilometers just east of them. We get liftoff, it's going to light up the sky, and I think everybody's going to be looking out those windows. Now, the Falcon 9 team has loaded the helium and nitrogen gas into the storage bottles on the launch vehicle. We've done some RF checkouts a little bit earlier this evening, and we're doing a final review of vehicle tests that were performed earlier today. Now, the SpaceX chief engineer will be checking with the team at T-minus 80 minutes to verify that we are good to continue the countdown. Now, the next major activity is flowing a small amount of fuel into the first stage to prime the Merlin 1D engines for ignition. Now, the team's also monitoring fuel and liquid oxygen loading preparations. We're ensuring that the propellants that are in the ground storage tanks are correctly chilled before we load those into the Falcon 9, beginning at T-minus 35 minutes. Now, for the range and the weather, the range continues to be go. We are continuing to release balloons. We have been getting balloon data back from the upper altitudes. Everything looks good. And more importantly, the weather has gone green again. They said it would be just a short period. We were red for precipitation. That has cleared up, and weather says that we should be clear the rest of the way through the countdown. So with that, everything is a go. We'll turn it over to Courtney here at Hawthorne.
Thanks, John. The Draco spacecraft you see on your screen is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth's orbit and beyond. And what we have sitting right here in front of us is a Draco engine, which helps get Dragon from one place to the next. And we're really excited to share some details about this engine. But first, let's take a closer look at the overall Dragon vehicle.
Yeah, Courtney, just to get an idea for size, this is our Dragon vehicle, and from the bottom to the top of the vehicle, it's about 8 meters or about 27 feet tall and about 4 meters in diameter, or 13 feet in diameter. The bottom portion of it is called the trunk, and this is the unpressurized portion of the vehicle, whereas the top portion here is the Dragon capsule, and this is the pressurized section. This black portion on the trunk here is actually a bunch of solar panels, and that helps power the vehicle while it's on the pad and while it's in flight, as well as while it's attached to the International Space Station. And we also have 16 Draco thrusters on the vehicle that help maneuver it around, and 8 Super Draco thrusters to help in case of emergency for a launch escape system.
It is the only spacecraft currently flying that is capable of returning significant amounts of cargo to Earth from the International Space Station, and it's the first private spacecraft to take humans to the space station. In order to make this journey, Dragon is equipped with 16 Draco thrusters, which are used to maneuver the spacecraft during the mission. And today, we actually have some flight-proven thrusters to show viewers. Each were flown on the first version of our Dragon vehicle, and we have one right here.
Yeah, Courtney, I think this is so cool that we have this in front of us. This specific Draco engine has actually flown twice, and that's been on CRS-9 in 2016 and CRS-15 back in 2018 on the first version of our Dragon vehicle. And reusability is so important to us, so it's really great to see a vehicle or a thruster right in front of us that has proven that it can refly in this design. Each thruster is capable of generating 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space. And the earlier cargo version of Dragon fired its thrusters more than 450,000 times, and that's between missions and testing. An interesting fact about the Draco engines is that they can serve different functions based on their positions on the spacecraft. So if you can see on the vehicle, you know, depending on what orientation we need to maneuver the vehicle, there are thrusters that are oriented differently so that we can make those maneuvers.
Yeah, well, thank you for your demonstration. That was great. And I just want to be sure everyone knows not to be confused with the Super Draco thrusters. We're coming up on the Launch Escape System health checks. The Launch Escape System is the automated system in place that can fire the 8 Super Draco thrusters on Dragon to quickly separate the crew from the rocket, either on the pad or during the ride uphill. While we wait on those Launch Escape System health checks, let's check back in with our team at Kennedy Space Center. Daryl.
All right, thank you, Courtney, and a great show and tell there with I enjoyed that. I thought that was kind of neat.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. We're currently T-minus 1 hour and 32 minutes and counting until liftoff and until Crew Dragon flies its next 4-person crew to the International Space Station. They'll, of course, have the astronauts inside the spacecraft. You're looking live down the crew access arm at the capsule on top of that Falcon 9 rocket there. Inside the spacecraft, Commander Raja Chari, pilot Tom Marshburn, and mission specialist Kayla Barron and Matthias Maurer. We've had some progress since we had John's update. Some of that progress we've seen so far, Shannon, why don't you outline some of that for us?
Well, so what we've done, you can see there that the closeout crew is still working on closing out the hatch. That does take a while, longer than one might expect. But again, I want to make sure that everything is done just so that hatch will hold its pressure. Before the hatch closure, we had the suit leak check, so we want those space suits to work properly should we need them in an emergency. And they've done some other systems checks to get ready for the all-important arming of the launch escape system.
Absolutely. And we saw a shot there of the crew, or the closeout crew. They were tethered, as you can see there. Both the crew member on the left and the right, you can see those tethers because they're literally 255 feet up in the air.
They are, and there's a little space there that we do not want them to fall through. So
absolutely,
that's why we keep them tethered.
And it looks like a step ladder there, in case they need to get up a little higher.
Boost up. Right, exactly.
It's good to have the right tools on hand. Here in just a few seconds, around an hour and 30 minutes before liftoff in our launch timeline, we should have that launch escape system and communication checks conducted by the Falcon launch team. These checkouts, as Shannon mentioned, they're standard part of the launch countdown. Of course, it's critical to make sure everything is working in order before arming this launch escape system. We'll get this call out in just a few seconds.
Yeah, it looks like the closeout crew is finishing up. Hopefully all is good, checking out with that hatch there. And as soon as they probably back away and leave, we will hear the arming of the launch escape system. But I tell you, if there's still work to do, they will sit there and keep working until that hatch is adequately closed and we know that it will hold pressure.
What does it sound like as you're sitting there in the seat and they're working on it from the outside?
Yeah, you kind of hear some thumping and bumping going on, and you do have those 2 windows in front, so you can kind of see a little bit what's happening, but mostly you really don't know exactly what they're doing. You just know that they are working on it and getting that much closer to launch. Looks like we're going to need to check something out a little bit taller, higher up on the capsule there.
Well, that step ladder came in handy.
Yeah, it sure did.
Not sure what that was.
I am not sure what that was either, but it looked like it was a duct to flow air or something to the spacecraft. Clearly it did not need to be there for the launch, and so they spent the time needed to remove it.
It did look like some ducting.
Yes.
As they continue to work here. And as you mentioned, they will take the time necessary to make sure everything is secure.
Absolutely right, and everybody knows what the timeline milestones are, so they have a very good idea of when they need to finish up this activity. They're not going to rush through it by any stretch of the imagination. They're going to do it very methodically, very carefully, but we do have a timeline because, as was mentioned previously, it is an instantaneous launch window. We need to launch exactly on time.
That instantaneous window needed to rendezvous with the International Space Station on time.
Exactly. But
in this schedule, they're aware, as you said, of where they have some flexibility.
Right. So nothing is timelined so tightly that we don't have a little bit of padding to take care of problems. Now, I don't know if they've got a problem they're addressing or if they're just doing the normal work, because I was not a member of the closeout team, so I don't know all of what they are doing, but they do have a good sense of when that work needs to be finished.
You were on the other side, inside the capsule for Crew 1. It does appear that the closeout crew member is now documenting with the camera phone.
Right, again.
All of the area around that capsule.
Yep.
You can see some of the closeout crew making their way out of the white room and down the crew access arm.
That's a very good sign. So looks like they are definitely finishing up their work. And soon, hopefully, we will hear that the launch escape system is armed.
We're expecting that in just a few seconds. Really any moment now. But he's got the light and the camera, still working that.
Yep, they're taking one last look to make sure that there is nothing trapped in that hatchway and that would inhibit the seals from working properly. It's interesting watching them work, don't you think?
Yes, it is. It's very thorough.
Very
I appreciate that.
Yes, very thorough. They'll have a set of procedures. I don't know if we've seen it, but the closeout crew will have tablets with them, and they will have on the tablets every step that they need to do.
And they'll also have those pictures that accompany each and every step that they took. So if they need to, for any reason,
to go
back and look at it.
Yep, exactly so.
This is, we should note, a brand new Dragon capsule.
It is. They get to ride in a new Dragon. That's exciting.
The booster.
The booster is a refurbished one, so it is not making its first flight.
Flew on CRS-22, landed back, was refurbished and
ready for use.
Ready for use, yeah. And there you see a nice shot on the pad against a dark sky.
And hopefully no more rain clouds in the way. Sounds like we have a go with the weather, so that is very good news.
That's what we heard. Our launch weather officer here at the Kennedy Space Center, Brian Cizik, telling us that that has cleared out. John I reporting earlier that the range went from red when we had the little shower.
Yes, we got rained on.
Yeah, even a few drops on the lens you can see have, still hanging around. Evidence that we had a little rain out there on the pad. You can see the ground is wet as well, the reflection of the lights off the ground and the droplets on the lens. But that has since moved out of the area, which is great news. And then the range went green for weather.
You can see from that view there, it looks like there's a lot of fog at the launch pad.
It does look that way.
But fog will not stop us from launching.
No, it won't. Neither will the thin clouds that we've had in the area. It was explained to me by our launch weather officer that we've got some onshore flow that basically a high pressure system north of us that's spinning and throwing that moisture from off the ocean, off the Atlantic Ocean, over the Kennedy Space Center. But there's a layer of dry air in the mid-levels of the atmosphere that has soaked up a fair amount of that moisture, and it is essentially drying it out, serving as kind of a a blow dryer effect.
A blow dryer for Florida.
Well, the 4 Crew-2 astronauts not only broke a record for the longest stay for a commercial spaceflight at 199 days, they also got a lot of science done. Let's take a look at that now.
Everything we're doing up in space is to benefit humanity or benefit human exploration.
We are natural explorers. We want to explore our environment. Whatever small area we start in, we always want to push the boundaries.
The great thing about space travel is the perspective that it gives you.
I feel a sense of pride getting up there, but at the same time, I want a lot of people to experience the same experience.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
You are part of this big team. You are part of an effort that is larger than yourself.
It is a cool perspective to see from up there that, wow, this whole planet looks pretty special.
Dragon separation visually confirmed.
Just flying a few hundred kilometers away from the Earth changes everything.
Endeavour, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home to planet Earth.
Welcome home to planet Earth, and welcome to the Kennedy Space Center if you're just joining us for the launch coverage of Crew-3 as we await liftoff just an hour and 21 minutes from now. Crew-2 that you just saw splash down in the Gulf off the coast of Pensacola on Monday after a very eventful yet productive stay, 6 months in space. Shannon, it looked to me from the infrared video that they had pretty calm waters, and you were out there, you experienced a similar.
Yes, you definitely want calm waters when you splash down in the water because you really don't want that capsule rocking too much. That's going to make the crew feel badly if they have too much motion.
You don't want to be bouncing around in the seas,
No.
whether it's in a boat or a space capsule.
No, it's
same
not
effect.
Good. Not good.
It's not good. Well, NASA leaders are watching this launch from right here at the Kennedy Space Center. They're watching the astronauts inside Crew Dragon Endurance with great anticipation. NASA's Marie Lewis is with a special guest right now from ESA at OSB-2. Marie.
That's right, Daryl. I'm here with ESA astronaut and geophysicist Alex Gerst, two-time flyer to space on the Russian Soyuz. Alex, thanks for being here.
Hey, Marie, good to be here. And it's finally good to see the stars come out.
Yeah.
They're poking through between the clouds.
Yeah, we had some sprinkles, but yeah, you pointed out we actually see stars, so that's a good sign here around the launch pad. We were talking earlier. Tell me about the difference between, you've flown to space twice. This is Matthias's first time, and it's totally different flying in a simulator versus the real thing, actually sitting on top of the rocket where Matthias is right now. So explain the difference and what Matthias must be feeling right now.
Yeah, actually, the real capsule, it looks the same as the simulator and it works the same. But if you spend a lot of time in the simulator and then sit on the real rocket on the real day, it's amazing. The difference is, it's feeling like you're sitting on this alive being there. It shrieks, and there's steam here, and it's powered up, it's humming, and when you sit on top, it's sometimes a bit like swaying in the wind, just ever so slightly, but you notice it. So there is a difference. You're going somewhere.
And then once you arrive at the International Space Station, they're going to be docking tomorrow, and you train for living in microgravity, but there's only so much training you can do to prepare yourself for what life is actually like on the International Space Station. So can you talk about what that's going to be like?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. There's no way to really simulate microgravity down here on Earth. That's why we have to fly up there to do all that science experiments. But it also includes training, like how to live on the space station, right? How you get your bearings, and how to translate. That's what we call like floating from one end of the space station to the other. How to sleep in space, how to go to the toilet, all things that you need to figure out on the first day, right?
Yeah.
And you can't train them, so that's really a challenge. And you just, people say they drink from a fire hose up there, right? The first 3 days.
Yeah, and you mentioned science. I want to talk a little bit about the science that Matthias is going to be working on. 35 different experiments specific to ESA. Can you touch on some of the experiments Matthias will be doing?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they do up there. That's actually a long continuation of experiments that have been done in the past. Actually, some that I already did. He's continuing. He's a materials scientist, so he's really good at those things. Looking at new materials down here. I mean, they do the experiments up there, but the use of the experiments is down here for like turbo engines that use less fuel, or lighter materials. That's important. But also like cell experiments on cell aging. Also experiments that help people who have muscular diseases down here. A really nice set of experiments. They actually have a bioprinter for skin cells up there. Really interesting, that they can put over wounds if they have them.
That's fantastic. Alex, thank you so much. We're out of time, so I'm going to send it back over to Jesse and Hawthorne, but thank you so much for being here, Alex.
You're very welcome.
Jesse, over to you.
Thanks, Marie. It's T-minus 1 hour and about 17 minutes from launch, and it always gets more and more exciting as we continue to get closer to that T0. Now, crew has already ingressed the vehicle. They have been helped out by our closeout team to get into their seats and get buckled in, attach their umbilicals to the spacecraft, which provide breathing air and comms to Dragon. And then they've completed comm checks and suit leak checks, and those comm checks were completed with the core here.
Endurance copies.
All right, and confirmation that the closeout team is now departing. So after those suit leak checks, the closeout team was able to close and seal the hatch, which also gets its own leak check. As we just heard, the closeout team has departed, and those final weather checks are coming up, which will be necessary before that final go, no-go is given for launch.
Yeah, before we get that final go, no-go, the various teams at both NASA and SpaceX will do an internal go poll, making sure conditions are right with Falcon 9, the Dragon, the Crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. Now let's check back in on Houston for a status on the team supporting the space station on their readiness for launch. Sandra, how's it going?
Thanks, Jesse. The team here in Mission Control Houston remains go for launch. All systems on board the station that are required to be healthy for this mission are continuing to look good. Before the station team is go for launch, they must verify that key systems on board the station are functioning as expected. This includes life support systems like oxygen generation, carbon dioxide removal, and the water recycling system that allows us to reuse about 90% of the water we send to station. We're also ensuring that the computers that allow us to command station's major subsystems, essentially the station's nervous system, are functioning normally. We also work with our Russian counterparts to ensure both methods of controlling the station's attitude are fully functional. This includes the large U.S. gyroscopes and the thrusters found on the Russian segment. Both systems play a critical role during Dragon's docking. Mission Control Houston will closely monitor the crew's flight and will continue to check off milestones for most of the journey. So I'll send it back to Hawthorne. The International Space Station team is ready for launch. Courtney?
Thanks, Sandra. We're so happy to hear that the space station team is ready for launch. As we mentioned, the Crew-3 astronauts will spend about 6 months aboard the International Space Station. They're starting their journey after the departure of the Crew-2 astronauts from the space station. Crew-2 splashed down off the Florida coast Monday night, where they were picked up at sea by SpaceX's Go Navigator recovery vessel. Next, SpaceX will launch Commercial Resupply Mission 24, or CRS-24, to space station to deliver cargo and supplies to Crew-3 and the astronauts and cosmonauts aboard. It will automatically dock to the International Docking Adapter 3 on the space-facing port of the station's Harmony module.
Before Crew-3 returns home, they will hand the baton to the next crew to arrive at the orbiting lab on Crew Dragon, the Crew-4 crew. That mission is targeted to launch in April of next year, and it will carry Crew Dragon commander and NASA astronaut Kjell Lindgren, pilot Bob Hines of NASA, and mission specialist Samantha Cristoforetti of the European Space Agency, or ESA, and a fourth crew member who has yet to be named. The Crew-4 astronauts will also complete a 6-month mission as expedition crew members aboard the space station. Now, they will be joined there by 3 additional crewmates who will launch on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft, and this will mean that 7 people will be on the space station at one time, allowing NASA to increase the amount of science conducted in space.
That's right, and this will be Kjell Lindgren's second trip into space following a 141-day stay at the space station in 2015 for expeditions 44 and 45. Before being selected as an astronaut in 2009, he was a flight surgeon supporting space shuttle and space station missions. In December 2020, NASA named him as one of the Artemis team of astronauts helping to pave the way for NASA's upcoming lunar missions.
Bob Hines, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force, was selected as an astronaut in 2017 and will be making his first trip into space on Crew-4. Before becoming an astronaut, he supported multiple military deployments in the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, served as a flight test pilot for the Federal Aviation Administration, and flew as a research pilot at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston.
And ESA astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti will be making her second trip to space as a mission specialist on Crew-4. She was selected as an ESA astronaut in 2009 and flew to the International Space Station in 2014 aboard a Russian Soyuz for a long-duration mission as part of Expedition 42 and 43. Cristoforetti is planned to take over as station commander for Expedition 68 and will be the first woman from ESA to do so. Now let's head over to Daryl at Kennedy Space Center. Daryl, how's it going over there?
All right, it's very good, Courtney. We are having clear skies at the moment. We can see some stars here at Kennedy, and that's great news. And if you're just joining us, welcome to coverage for the mission known as Crew-3, NASA and SpaceX's 4th flight of astronauts to the International Space Station. We are at T-minus 1 hour and 11 minutes until launch. Liftoff time still holding for 9:03 p.m. Eastern time, and we're tracking no issues with Falcon 9 or with Dragon. The range is green, and the weather, it's cooperating. Moving on out, we had a light shower earlier, but it is gone. The range is now green, and so over the last 3 hours, our crew of Raja Chari, Tom Marshburn, Kayla Barron, and Matthias Maurer, they donned their SpaceX suits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room. They walked out of the crew quarters building, as every NASA astronaut has done since Apollo 7, and then they were transported to the pad where they climbed inside the SpaceX Crew Dragon Endurance. And now we are seeing them live while they await liftoff. And Shannon, what is the crew doing right now in these moments as they wait?
Yeah, they are waiting, but they know that they're getting closer and closer to launch. The time really starts to feel like it's speeding up, especially when we get that launch escape system armed. But what they're doing is they're thinking about their task ahead. They're thinking about running through the nominal procedures as well as running through any emergency procedures that in case they need them.
If you remember back in April, and we've talked a lot about this, we launched NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, JAXA astronaut, and Aki Hoshide, and ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet to the space station, and those 4 returned from their 6-month mission. Shane Kimbrough saying after he splashed down, it's great to be back on planet Earth.
It's always nice to come home.
It is. And so, not that I would know, you've told me a few times it is great to come back home.
It's just, it's a long journey, so it is nice to go home to somewhere familiar.
Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls. The pad crew has departed, and we watch them leave the area as we zoom out. We get ready for launch through these series of polls. The crew will also arm the launch escape system, and fueling of the Falcon 9 will then begin. Launch, of course, set for 9:03 p.m. Eastern, and this will include a 12-minute flight to orbit, and then a roughly 22-hour flight to dock with the International Space Station at 7:10 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, November 11th, which is Veterans Day, and it's not lost on us that we have 2 active military members on this flight, and so it seems fitting, a day that we remember all veterans who have served.
Right, yes, it's important to recognize our veterans, and NASA definitely has a long history of working with the military service. We are a civilian organization, but they do provide some expertise to us. And as you pointed out, we've got 2 active duty military on that flight.
Many test pilots from the military ranks have come through NASA, of course. That was certainly true in the early days of the space program, and it's still true today.
It's still true today, but we also have non-military people such as myself, so we take a lot of scientists and engineers that are not affiliated with the military.
And as we look outside at the launch pad at 39A, for those who don't know, this is a very vast place. Kennedy Space Center shares land with the 140,000-acre Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge. So that's why when you're looking there, it's just so dark in so much of the picture. Even when we're a far distance from the launch pad, it's an area that has been preserved for a very long time, for decades going back. And since it is Native American Heritage Month here in the month of November, we should mention that this was land once occupied by indigenous tribes, including the Ais and the Timucua. A quick history of NASA's Commercial Crew program. It all began with the first successful and historic test flight with NASA astronauts called Demo 2. After that, NASA certified SpaceX to fly astronauts regularly to and from the International Space Station, and the first rotational mission was, of course, drumroll please, Crew-1. Shannon, that was a big deal because it was the first time in more than a decade since Space Shuttle retired for longer duration space flights. This was the first one. You were on it, and you flew up there and spent almost 6 months in space.
That's right. We did spend almost 6 months in space, and we make a big deal about this being the first capsule because even though it has made it to space, there's still things that we need to see how it ages during its time on orbit. So we're constantly looking at its systems and making sure that everything is working properly so we can keep crew up there as long as we need them.
And a lot of what you experienced then flowed back into improvements that were made for this brand new spacecraft.
Absolutely. Each time a crew comes back, just as we did, we give comments and what we call lessons learned and maybe some suggestions on how to make things a little bit better. And so SpaceX is good and NASA is good, and they try and flow those improvements in whenever they can.
A lot of those improvements made on this capsule. We've been hearing a little from the crew on board Dragon, currently strapped into their seats, as you can see there, helmets mid-level so they can look below them. They have completed their communications and suit leak checks. They're able to follow all the milestones, Shannon, still ahead on those displays, as you've been telling us, just above them. They are getting insight into all of the Dragon and Falcon 9 systems as we proceed and march ever so slowly towards launch. And then at T-minus 1 hour and 5 minutes, let's go ahead and check in for a status update from John I at SpaceX headquarters. John?
The good news is we've had a smooth countdown, and the SpaceX team is getting ready to pick up the pace here in the last hour. Now, our next major activity happens at T-minus 1 hour when the SpaceX closeout team actually gets out of the blast danger area. They've already left the crew access arm and are leaving the launch complex. That just leaves the crew on board Dragon inside of 39A complex. Now, Falcon 9, as you can see on the screen, the two-stage reusable rocket, we've done our final propulsion checkouts of the first and second stages, and the engines began just a few minutes ago in preparation for propellant loading. So we're testing and cycling valves on the engine. We're checking the engine pneumatics pressurization system right now. At T-minus 45 minutes, the team will report their readiness for propellant load with a final electronic go-no-go poll. Now, before we can start loading propellant on the Falcon 9, we have a couple of major tasks to perform with respect to Dragon. First, after the poll is complete, we're going to retract that crew access arm that you can see alongside Dragon from the fixed service structure. We're going to move that away to launch position. That'll happen approximately between T-minus 44 and T-minus 42 minutes. With the arm out of the way, the crew will arm the launch escape system. Once these two events are complete, Dragon is ready for Falcon to begin propellant loading. On the weather front, we're also verifying that we meet all the constraints, and as we mentioned a little bit earlier, everything both at ground level and at upper altitude looks good and ready to support an on-time launch in just over 64 minutes. So with everything looking good right now, the range is also ready to support from historic Launch Pad 39A. The worldwide network of ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support Dragon as it heads into orbit. Everything is looking good for that instantaneous launch window at 9:03:31 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 2 hours, 3 minutes, 31 seconds Universal Time. As a reminder, once we begin loading propellant, there's no opportunity to change the T0. Timing for drag and rendezvous with the International Space Station is very precise, down to the second, so we're going to get one chance at it today. But the good news, coming up just over 63 minutes and counting, we are go for launch, Jesse.
Great, thank you, John. It's always great to hear that we have everything go for our T0.
We will be cycling orbit tank isolation valves to equalize low flow pressure at this time. Additionally, you are go for section 6. When ready, report go for launch.
Endurance copies of recycling some pressurization valves, and we are go for section 6.
Awesome, just hearing some comms from the teams. Today's launch marks the third time a rotational crew will fly on a commercial spacecraft, and each of our crew members brings a diverse set of experiences to today's
Additionally,
flight.
you are go for section
Raja Chari
6.
is the
When ready,
commander
report
of
go
the
for launch.
Crew-Dragon spacecraft and the Crew-3 mission. Chari is responsible for all phases
Endurance
of flight
copies of
from launch to
recycling some
re-entry.
pressurization valves, and
Once
we are
on
go for
board
section 6.
station, he'll serve as an Expedition 66 flight engineer. He was born in Milwaukee, but considers Cedar Falls, Iowa, his hometown. He is a colonel in the U.S. Air Force and joins the mission with extensive experience as a test pilot. Over his career, he has accumulated more than 2,500 hours of flight time. This will be the first space flight for Chari, who became a NASA astronaut in 2017. He is also a member of the Artemis team, so he is eligible for assignment to a future lunar mission.
And Tom Marshburn is the pilot of the Crew-Dragon spacecraft and second in command for the mission, responsible for spacecraft systems and performance. Once aboard station, he will serve as an Expedition 66 flight engineer and is scheduled to assume command of the station for Expedition.
Go for launch at 6.4, section 4.100.
Copy, Dragon. You are go for launch.
All right, and that call, Endurance, is a go for launch. Exciting news. Again, Tom Marshburn is a Statesville, North Carolina native who became an astronaut in 2004. Prior to serving in the astronaut corps, the medical doctor served as a flight surgeon at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston and later became medical operations lead for the International Space Station. The Crew-3 mission will be his third visit to the space station and his second long-duration mission. And the Crew-Dragon will be the third spacecraft for Marshburn to fly in after the Space Shuttle and the Russian Soyuz. He previously served as a crew member of STS-127 in 2009 and Expedition 34 and 35, which concluded in 2013.
Kayla Barron is a mission specialist for Crew-3. As a mission specialist, she will work closely with the commander and pilot to monitor the spacecraft during the dynamic launch and re-entry phases of flight. Once aboard the station, she will become a flight engineer for Expedition 66. Barron was born in Pocatello, Idaho, but considers Richland, Washington her hometown. She earned a bachelor's degree in systems engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland in 2010, and a master's degree in nuclear engineering from the University of Cambridge in England in 2011 as a Gates Cambridge Scholar. Lieutenant Commander Barron earned her submarine warfare officer qualification and deployed 3 times while serving aboard the USS Maine. At the time of her selection as an astronaut candidate in 2017, she was serving as the flag aide to the superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy.
And Matthias Maurer will also be a mission specialist for Crew-3, working with the commander and pilot to monitor the spacecraft during the dynamic launch and re-entry phases of flight. He will also become a long-duration crew member aboard the space station. Maurer comes from Sankt Wendel in the German state of Saarland. Before becoming an astronaut, Maurer held a number of engineering and research roles, both in a university setting and at ESA. In 2016, Maurer spent 16 days on an undersea mission as part of NASA's Extreme Environment Mission Operations, or NEMO, space analog. Like Chari and Barron, Maurer will be making his first trip to space with the Crew-3 mission.
Each of these 4 crew members will join Expedition 66 once they arrive at the International Space Station, with Russian cosmonaut Anton Shkaplerov as commander.
Yep, and it looks like we are just under 1 hour from liftoff now. And this day is a continuation of regular crew flights to the space station from U.S. soil. This will be the fourth flight of Dragon with NASA Crew and its third long-duration mission to the International Space Station.
And today, our crew is flying the newest Dragon in our fleet, and we'll be taking a ride on board the Falcon 9 that supported the CRS-22 mission back in June of this year. Now, it's been a great countdown so far. Weather is still looking good, so the excitement is continuing to pick up here as we get closer to that T0.
That's right. We started our coverage with Suit Up just over 3 hours ago. The SpaceX team helped the crew put on their suits and conduct initial checkouts before crew walkout. Crew walkout was where Raja Chari, Tom Marshburn, Kayla Barron, and Matthias Maurer gave final goodbyes with friends and family gathered outside of the operations and checkout building before they began that roughly 20-minute ride to pad 39A.
And though it was just after sunset and already dark outside, we did still get some awesome views of those Teslas heading down the NASA Causeway before the crew arrived at the pad. And once they arrived, they all took a brief moment to enjoy the view of the vehicle that they will be taking flight on, and then headed up the fixed service structure to begin a process known as Crew Ingress, where the astronauts entered the vehicle, and the SpaceX team performed a series of checks to ensure that the suits, seats, and vehicle interactions were all functioning properly.
Then about 30 minutes ago, the team closed Dragon's hatch with the crew safely inside. So again, we're just under 1 hour to go until Dragon starts breathing fire. Things will pick up as we get close to the go, no-go pole to arm the launch escape system and begin propellant loading.
Now, the crew pull for readiness was completed at T-minus 60 minutes, and the Dragon pull for prop load is coming up here in about a minute at T-minus 55 minutes. Now, next up at T-minus 45 minutes after that will be an internal mission control Hawthorne pull, and then the launch director's pull for propellant loading. When we get to about T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract, and the crew will get the call to close their visors and arm the launch escape system. Now, this is the automated system in place that can fire the 8 Super Draco thrusters on Dragon to quickly separate the crew from the rocket, either on the pad or during the flight on the ride uphill.
And then once we reach about T-minus 35 minutes, propellant loading for the Falcon 9 will begin. Throughout the countdown, we've been getting some pretty incredible views of the astronauts inside Dragon, making their final preparations, as well as some close-up views of those suits. The teams have often described the suits as an extension of the Dragon spacecraft, almost a mini spacecraft inside of a spacecraft. We're standing by now for that call for propellant loading.
Again, that should be coming up here at about T-minus 55 minutes, so we're just about roughly 40 seconds away from that.
The crew in position, ready to go. Taking a look at those monitors above them.
And from the view that you can see on your screen, we have Raja Chari, the commander of Crew-3, closest to the screen, with Tom Marshburn in the pilot seat next to him.
With everything still proceeding well, let's send it back to the team in Florida. Daryl, how's it going there?
It's going great out here, ladies, and we're here with NASA astronaut Shannon Walker. If you want to get a question in, hashtag #AskNASA on Twitter, and she will do her best to answer your question. And by the way, speaking of social, Kennedy is hosting a virtual NASA social on our Facebook page. People who have joined are posting messages, pictures, and videos with their fellow space fans. And we want to share now 4 video messages that came into our virtual social for Crew-3 that were posted by the last 4 crew members to fly on Dragon. That is the crew of Inspiration 4.
I want to wish the astronauts of Crew-3 all the best on their journey to the space station. It's going to be one heck of a ride. Falcon 9 and Dragon, as you guys know, is an incredible vehicle.
Hi everyone at Virtual NASA Social. I'm Dr. Cyan Proctor. I am the mission pilot from Inspiration 4, and I just want to wish Crew-3 an awesome liftoff as they head to the International Space Station.
Hi Raja, Tom, Matthias, Kayla. Hank's here just to wish you well on your mission into space. I couldn't be more excited for you for the journey you're about to go through. Getting into that Falcon rocket with your suits on that have your name on it is a feeling like no other.
Crew-3, I just want to say I'm so excited for all of you. I know that rush of emotion that you're going to feel with your spacesuit on, strapped into the capsule, and you're about to have the best ride of your life. Just laugh the whole way up there like we did.
Just want to wish you all the best, and look forward to exchanging some stories a little bit down the road. Take care. Godspeed, Crew-3.
I love Haley Arsenault saying that she laughed the whole way up.
I can definitely relate to that.
Can you really?
Yes.
Well, what was so funny?
It's an exciting ride. You're just happy.
You're
You
just
gotta
so
laugh.
thrilled.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And whenever she says anything, it always brings a smile to my face. She has such great energy. Well, throughout the program, we've been answering your Ask NASA questions from social media. We have time now for a few more before Falcon 9 fueling begins, and so we'll pop it up on the screen. And Shannon, you've been answering them all show long. We appreciate that. So the question we have up now is, what are your tips for me to go to space? I'm a high school freshman from Poland, dreaming of going to space.
Yes, so the first thing, the most important thing is to do well in school. We need people who are very accomplished and have lots of different skills, and it all starts with a good education. Now, being from Poland, you're going to have to apply to the European Space Agency to be part of their astronaut program, and hopefully they will have another selection one of these days. But really, do well in school and then go pursue a field of work that really interests you. What you want to do is do something you're very passionate about, and that really, when you're passionate about something, you're going to do well at it, and it's going to stand out, and people are going to take notice. And yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific, STEM is good, right?
Right.
But there have been people who have not gone into STEM and become astronauts.
Every astronaut that we have taken on the NASA side has got a STEM background.
Oh, they do, and
yes.
so that is a requirement.
That is a requirement right now. Now, of course, we're starting to fly more people, and there are more opportunities to get to space, so it may not be a requirement in the future, but right now, at least on the NASA side, you need a STEM background.
A STEM background and study hard and get some good grades.
Yes.
Our next question, does it get very hot wearing the spacesuits, or is the material breathable?
Yes, no, the material is absolutely not breathable because you need those spacesuits to hold pressure should something go wrong in the capsule. So you need it to completely contain that atmosphere around you. So they can get a little hot, but the entire time you're in the suit, they're flowing air through it to keep you cool.
You've got an air conditioning system for the suit.
Yes.
Blowing that air around.
Yes, exactly. You need the air to be blown around because you really don't want to end up with a carbon dioxide bubble right in front of your face.
All right. Thank you so much, Shannon, for answering those questions. And keep the questions coming. We appreciate them at #AskNASA. Now we'll send it over to Marie, who is standing by with the Deputy Director of the Kennedy Space Center. Marie?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Marie.
And I wanted to ask you about a special connection that you have to Kayla and Raja, part of the Turtle class of astronauts in 2017. You were actually on their selection board. Tell me about that.
Oh, I sure was. In the class of 2017, we had the most applicants ever in the history of NASA, 18,353. And when it was all said and done, we picked 12. Of course, Raja and Kayla were part of that class. So to see them when they first walked in for their very first NASA interview, and to know now they're on board the Dragon on top of the Falcon 9 rocket, it's just amazing. I'm very excited.
And so much has happened in such a short period of time. You became the deputy director just earlier this year in the middle of a very busy launch campaign. We've seen private citizens launch from here at Kennedy this year. More of that is coming. We've got a regular cadence of these commercial crew missions to station. And we're coming up on the 60th anniversary of Kennedy. So, so much has happened, like we said, in such a short period of time. What do you see ahead for the next 60 years of Kennedy Space Center?
Well, I see it's just getting started now. So this started with a vision. 10 years ago, we flew out the space shuttle, and we had a vision to create the world's premier multi-user spaceport for both commercial and government users, and now you're seeing it coming to fruition. So it's just got to be, we have 24 launches now, more launches than any place else in the world. When we finish this year, we should have close to 50 launches, and it's just going to increase more and more.
I want to also ask you about what is in the building right behind us. Of course, the Goliath vehicle assembly building, the Artemis rocket, the SLS Space Launch System rocket is fully stacked. We want to show you a peek inside. Our gigantic moon rocket, there it is. That is the Space Launch System, and the Orion capsule being stacked on top. This is video from late October inside the vehicle assembly building. And now that the rocket and capsule are fully stacked, it stands at 322 feet tall, and that is taller, in fact, than the Statue of Liberty. Quite a sight in there, Kelvin. I don't know if you've had a chance to actually go inside since that stack in October, but it's just astounding. And what do you have to say about that if you've seen it inside, and what do we have to get through before that first launch of Artemis 1?
Okay, I saw it today, and I see it about every week, you know, and it is just humongous to see that rocket and to know that that rocket will carry our astronauts to the moon and beyond, hopefully to Mars. So right now we're undergoing something we call IVT, Interface Verification Test. We'll do that for a couple more days, and then we're getting prepared to roll it out for a wet dress rehearsal. So hopefully that'll happen the end of this year, early next year. We'll roll it out to the pad, fully fuel it, test all the interfaces, pad, vehicle, and roll it back for a launch, hopefully in February.
Fantastic. Calvin Manning, thank you so much. And by the way, happy Veterans Day a little early. I know you served, so thank you for your service.
Hey, thank you, Marie.
All right, we're going to go over to John Innsbrucker now in Hawthorne as the action begins to pick up on the pad. John?
Just inside T-minus 47 minutes. We're listening right now to the countdown net, waiting for the SpaceX launch director to discuss the propellant load and launch poll results and give final instructions to the launch team. At this time, we have completed all checks on the Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft. We're also checking with the Dragon mission director to make sure that they are ready to go. And right now we're waiting to listen for that launch director to come up. Now we have been checking, as I said, with the Dragon mission director, also NASA launch manager to make sure they're ready. Now you can see on the screen right now, Falcon 9 on the pad, crew access arm alongside the Dragon capsule. Earlier you saw the vehicle assembly building during that previous interview. The Falcon and Dragon launch team, as well as key members of NASA, are in the Launch Control Center, which is just adjacent to the vehicle assembly building. And as you saw earlier, if you were with us, they've got a view straight towards pad 39A through the large windows of firing room 4. Now, going back to the current screen view, you can see the crew access arm. That arm, once we finish the readiness poll and instructions to the crew, or instructions to the launch team.
Attention on countdown net.
And here it comes.
The poll is complete, and teams have pulled go for propellant load and launch. And stand by for hold
SpaceX
and
launch
escape
director
protocol.
says poll is complete.
For
preparing to
non-urgent,
brief the
no-go
hold
conditions,
and
brief
safety
CE or
protocol.
LD, and they will approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold and on countdown net. Launch control will poll abort is the launch complete, auto sequence and teams have immediately. pulled go for Proceed propellant to load and abort launch. auto sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off, relying solely on automated abort. And stand by for hold and launch escape protocol. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or for non-urgent, no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD, and they will approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed to the launch abort auto sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off, relying solely on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules.
Space Center as we get ready to move the crew
For those
access
in
arm.
Firing
That's
4
right,
here at
John. We are
KSC.
waiting
In the
that
event
big
of a
moment
fire alarm,
here at the
operators
Kennedy
noted
Space
below
Center in Florida. As
56.80
we
or remain at their
do,
post while the alarm
we
is
are
evacuated.
T-minus
In the event
43
that personnel
minutes
safety is
and
threatened,
counting, and just got
evacuate
some.
to south-facing emergency exit leads directly outside.
And there is the retraction.
Launch
Good
control
shot
at this time. You may
Dragon
proceed
moving.
with arming the crew arm
It's
for
not
movement.
moving. The crew access arm is.
Is moving away from it, yep. And you can see that from inside the Dragon as well.
And there it goes. When you're in the capsule, can you see that?
You can. You have windows that are at pretty much your foot level, and you can see a little
Crew
bit out.
access
So
arm
you do
retraction
see
has
that
started.
moving away, and once it's gone, you know it's just you and the rocket.
There's the camera pointed directly at Dragon. Great view there. You can see the strong back at the top.
Oh, that is a fantastic view.
And this crew access arm can move faster than it's doing right now under certain circumstances, right?
Absolutely. If it needs to go back to being up against the capsule, it can move quite quickly, actually.
It was just not too long ago, about an hour ago, that we saw the astronauts walking down that very crew access arm. Now it is rotating away from the rocket.
Just one more step closer to launch. An important milestone.
Absolutely. I'm enjoying just watching the various parts of the launch pad go by
Yes.
as we look out that
Yeah, you don't
that moving
often
arm.
get that view, so
No.
it is, might as well soak it in while we've got it.
There's nobody inside that arm. There's nobody on the pad. The only people who are there are the 4 astronauts inside that SpaceX Dragon capsule. You can see the water deluge system to the left, out the opening there to the white room.
Crew access arm retraction complete.
And we just heard the call out that the crew access arm has completed its retraction away from the rocket. And so up next,
Dragon SpaceX, you are go
We
for
wanna do a
section
little-
7 of 4.100. Close visors and arm the launch escape system.
Endurance copies, we're go
And that's
for
what's
section 7
up
of
next.
4.100.
Crew
arming the
access
launch
arm
escape
retraction
system.
complete.
And while we await that, let's take a social question.
Oh,
for
that
Shannon.
sounds like a great idea.
Michelle Stone asks, as an astronaut, what moment does it become real that you are about to launch to
Dragon
space?
SpaceX, you are go for
You know,
section
Michelle,
7
it is
of 4.100.
right about now.
Close
So
visors and arm the launch escape
everything
system.
else has happened according to plan, and this is really the final
Endurance
bit
copies, we're
before
go
you
for
launch
section
into
7 of
space.
4.100.
So anything had gone